Chapter 633. When Chu Xiu used Lin Ye's identity, he killed to his heart's content. He simply had no qualms about killing. But now, it was time to pay back the karma he had sown back then. In fact, Chu Xiu was already mentally prepared for such an outcome. After all, he did not imagine that he could hide his identity for the rest of his life. However, Chu Xiu did not expect that his identity would be exposed so quickly. This also made Chu Xiu a little unprepared, so things were a little tricky. But now was not the time to think about this. Temporarily stabilizing the Guanzhong torture room was the most important thing. Wei Shuya and the others could not teleport. After Mei Qinglian sent the message, it would take some time for them to come here. The Imperial Dragon Riders were very fast. This group of people obeyed orders very strictly. As soon as Chu Xiu issued the order, they had already chosen a martial artist with the fastest movement technique and brought the order to Guanxi. The next day, they had already brought the Ghost Hand King and the others here. Of course, most of the troops were still on the way. They were not as fast as the Ghost Hand King and the others. Seeing Chu Xiu again, the Ghost Hand King and the others felt a little strange. They did not expect Chu Xiu to be Lin Yi, who had recently risen to fame in the Yinma clan. This made them feel strange. It was as if they had never really known Chu Xiu. Of course, the Ghost Hand King already had some premonition. After all, he was the person who had the most contact with Chu Xiu. He was sure that Chu Xiu's identity was not that simple. He just did not expect Chu Xiu to have such a powerful background. Lu Hongye, who had been in seclusion in Guanxi, also came. He was even more shocked than the Ghost Hand King and the others. He was not Chu Xiu's subordinate, and he had never associated Chu Xiu with Lin Yi. Who knew that someone would suddenly tell him that Lin Yi was Chu Xiu? Even a martial Dao master like him, who had been through a lot, could not react to such a mysterious thing. Looking at everyone present, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm sorry, everyone. I hid it from you for so long. Now, everyone knows my identity. Of course, identity is identity. But Chu Xiu, am still Chu Xiu. It's just that I'm not the Chu Xiu of the Guanzhong torture room, but the Chu Xiu of the Devil's Path. So, what comes next is up to you all to choose. Those who are willing to join the demonic path with me will remain the same in the future. I dare not say that you have a bright future, but at the very least, if you follow me, Chu Xiu, I won't let you suffer." Upon hearing this, the Ghost Hand King and the others from the Blue Dragon Society did not even think about it. They immediately stood behind Chu Xiu. The Ghost Hand King smiled and said, "This old man is not young anymore. I can't withstand the messy storms of the pugilistic world. I don't want to wander anymore. It's good that I don't have to worry about official Chu." In fact, the Ghost Hand King only looked old. Under Chu Xiu, he was treated well, even better than Tangya and the others. After all, he was someone who helped Chu Xiu take care of some of the chores. Even if he didn't fill his own pockets, it was okay for him to be a little biased in terms of cultivation resources. Chu Xiu knew that when the water was too clear, there would be no fish. Moreover, the Ghost Hand King did not take everything for himself. He gave Tangya and the others a lot of cultivation resources. No one would complain about the Ghost Hand King because of this, so Chu Xiu did not pursue the matter. After going through this period of pampered cultivation, coupled with the Guanxi area's techniques that the Ghost Hand King could read at will, he had long stepped into the 5 Qis gathering in the Origin Realm, the same as Tangya and the others. However, because he was a little older when he stepped into the 3 Flower Realm, he always looked very old. Although the Ghost Hand King's cultivation was improving rapidly, he was becoming less and less fond of fighting with others. In his opinion, wasn't it better to be a butler for Chu Xiu and take care of these chores better than being a killer in the Blue Dragon Society? As for the other warriors from the Blue Dragon Society, they also stood on Chu Xiu's side without hesitation. Tangya smiled and said, "Official Chu has been hiding it from us for a long time. If I had known that you were from the demonic path, I would have asked you to teach me demonic arts. I am very interested in this thing." Yen Bugue stood behind Chu Xiu with his giant sword on his back. He was a man of few words, but at this time he also said, "The demonic path is very good. The demonic path can kill more people." The rest of the fire slaves and the others also expressed their opinions. No one wanted to fall behind. For them, there was no substantial difference between the Blue Dragon Society and the Hidden Demon Clan. Anyway, their reputation in the Jianghu was not that good. The only difference was that when they were in the Blue Dragon Society, they did more work and took less. On the other hand, under Chu Xiu's command, they worked less and received more. Therefore, they didn't care what Chu Xiu's identity was. As long as Chu Xiu could still give them the same treatment, they would not betray him. Lu Hongye also stood behind Chu Xiu silently. At this time, he had no other choice. No matter what Chu Xiu's identity was, he had to follow Chu Xiu to the end. Chu Xiu could still use two identities, but in the Battle of Red Maple Valley, he indirectly helped Chu Xiu kill so many people. There was no turning back. Lu Jianhong was dead, so he could only act as Lu Hongye for the rest of his life. Some of Chu Xiu's subordinates had joined Chu Xiu because of Lu Fengxian. They only hesitated for a moment, but they did not choose to leave. These people were all rogue cultivators. After joining Chu Xiu, they had a very easy life. It was quite difficult to find a force with such freedom and good treatment. Moreover, most of these people were loyal people. They were Lu Fengxian's friends. When Lu Fengxian was being hunted, they helped Lu Fengxian escape from northern Yan. It was Chu Xiu who took them in, so at this time, they naturally could not betray Chu Xiu. The only ones who were hesitant were Du Guangzhong and the other warriors who came from the Guangzhong torture room. Logically speaking, they all grew up in the Guangzhong torture room. They also knew that Chu Xiu was the traitor and should be eliminated. But they were Chu Xiu's subordinates. In all fairness, compared to when they were under Wei Jieduan, Chu Xiu treated them 10 times better. They were much more powerful in Guanxi, and they did not have to fight against each other. As long as they were strong enough, they could stand out. Therefore, after arguing for a moment, Du Guangzhong took the lead and said, "I'm grateful for official Chu's recognition. If it weren't for you, I would have to live the rest of my life in Guanxi. As long as I can follow you, what's the harm in falling into the devil's path?" Seeing Du Guangzhong express his opinion, the other Jianghu arresters of Guanxi immediately cursed at him. Although this guy usually looked honest when it came to flattery, they were a little tired of it. But now that Du Guangzhong had expressed his opinion, they naturally could not fall behind. People tended to follow blindly, and they immediately began to express their loyalty to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Don't worry, everyone. If you don't betray me, I won't betray you either." Right now, the Guangzhong torture room is in chaos. From now on, everyone will have to move. Tangya, Yan Bugue, the two of you come with me. Ghost Hand King, bring the others to take over the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army. Take the second prince's warrant and ask them to cooperate with you. Compared to them, I naturally trust you more. If you encounter someone causing trouble and you can't handle it, then go find Senior Lu Hongye. He's a martial arts grandmaster, and with his strength in the entire Guangzhong city, he can suppress all the troublemakers. Remember, during this period of time, no one is allowed to leave the Guangzhong city, nor is anyone allowed to enter the Guangzhong city. Sir. Everyone responded in unison. After Chu Xiu left with Tangya and Yan Bugui, Ghost Hand King began to issue commands in high spirits. Du Guangzhong, on the other hand, sighed helplessly. In the past, the local constables of the Guangzhong torture room, had many conflicts with Ghost Hand King and others from the Blue Dragon Society. At that time, both sides were evenly matched. One side was strong, and the other side had more people. But from now on, they really could not win against Ghost Hand King and others. Because they hesitated. Attitude was very important. Ghost Hand King stood on Chu Xiu's side at the first moment. Although they also chose to be loyal to Chu Xiu in the end, that moment of hesitation had already determined who was superior. Looking at Chu Xiu's attitude now, he brought Yan Bugui and Tangya with him, leaving Ghost Hand King to command the overall situation, while they could only be subordinates. Du Guangzhong also scolded himself in his heart for being so indecisive. If he had stood on Chu Xiu's side at the first moment like Ghost Hand King and others, the result might have been different. At this time, Chu Xiu was too lazy to care about the open and secret struggles of his subordinates. If the water was too clear, there would be no fish. If his subordinates were all in harmony, then there would be a problem. As long as they did not fight and affect their own strength, Chu Xiu was too lazy to care. At this time, Chu Xiu was leading his men to the residence of Chu Yuanxing in Guangzhou City. At present, Guangzhou City was under martial law. Whether it was the Guangzhou torture room martial artists in the city, or some pedestrians and merchants, nobody was allowed to enter or leave. The city was in a state of panic, and the number of pedestrians had decreased. Tanya stood behind Chu Xiu and asked curiously, "Sir, I heard that you are very familiar with soul-seizing saber Li Feilian, the fifth on the Longhu leaderboard? The two of you had once joined hands to kill the martial arts grandmaster Jianghu of the Chunyang Dao sect?" Chu Xiu turned his head and said, "Are you interested in Li Feilian?" Tanya grinned and said, "They both use flying knives and concealed weapons. That person is a senior. Ask around and see if you can learn by analogy." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not the same. Your concealed weapons are real concealed weapons, but Li Feilian's flying knives are not. They are an open and above-board attack. They will definitely hit their target. Cause and effect are involved, and the knife will seize the soul. Li Feilian's martial arts can't be learned by others, and can't be taught by others. You don't have to think about learning by analogy. However, you can develop in another direction. You can turn complexity into simplicity and condense your hidden weapons together. The most important thing is not the hidden weapons themselves, but the person who uses them." Chapter 634. Of the warriors under Chu Xiu's command, Chu Xiu was most optimistic about the warriors from the Blue Dragon Society. They had previously been the elites of the Heaven Sin Division. Now that they had joined Chu Xiu, they had better resources, and their cultivation speed had improved by leaps and bounds. Of these people, the Wolf King and the Fire Slave were slightly less talented. While they worked hard enough, their talent was limited. If they did not have opportunities, their achievements in this life would be limited. On the other hand, Tanya and Yen Bugui's age and talent were considered to be above average. Tanya was slightly lazy. Right now, he was half a step into the unity of the world. Breaking through this realm was only a matter of time. As for Yen Bugui, his talent was a little mysterious. Even Chu Xiu could not understand it. Chu Xiu did not know what Yen Bugui was thinking about, nor did he know where his comprehension of the martial way had reached. Perhaps one day when he was in a daze or practicing his sword, he would be able to break through. So for these two people, Chu Xiu did not mind teaching them. Although Chu Xiu's realm was only one level higher than theirs, when it came to martial Dao attainments, Chu Xiu had already far surpassed most martial Dao masters. Tanya nodded thoughtfully. Chu Xiu then turned to Yen Bugui, but in the end he still shook his head and said, "Your martial Dao is too unique, different from mine. I can't give you any pointers, but you just have to remember one thing, and that is to hold fast to your own martial Dao. When any martial Dao is developed to the extreme, its power will be earth-shattering. The strongest is not martial arts, not weapons, not martial arts. It will always be people." Yen Bugui nodded his head. His eyes were unfocused, and no one knew if he understood or not. Chu Xiu's understanding came from his experience. Just like how he had fought his way to the Ba Mountain Sword sect. The Ba Mountain Sword sect was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. In the past, they had been extravagant, and had produced several powerful people who could stir the world. But now it had completely declined. Even a junior like Chu Xiu had come knocking on their door. Like a tiger made of paper, they were almost annihilated. It was the same martial arts, the same legacy, but this generation of Ba Mountain Sword sect was so weak. This could not be blamed on the ancestors or the method. It could only be said that this generation was not good enough. The mansion that Chu Yuanxing lived in was very conspicuous in Guangzhou City. But at this time, the mansion was draped with white wreaths, and some of the servants were wearing mourning clothes. There was a faint sound of crying coming from the mansion. Chu Xiu knew what was going on. Chu Yuanxing was leading a group of people to cry Chu Kuanga. Divine Lord Luo had forced open Chu Yuanxing's tomb and insulted the dead. This was not only an insult to the Guangzhou torture room, but also to Chu Yuanxing, the only son of Chu Kuanga. There were 2 warriors of the Chu family guarding the gate of the mansion. They could be counted as people of the Guanzhong torture room, but the Guanzhong torture room had specially used them to protect Chu Yuanxing. They were extremely loyal to Chu Yuanxing. Seeing Chu Xiu come, the 2 warriors of the Guanzhong torture room instinctively pulled out their weapons and looked warily at Chu Xiu. Although what happened in the main hall did not spread on a large scale, so many people saw it. It was impossible to hide it, so they naturally heard the news. They also knew that Chu Xiu was secretly Lin Yi of the Yinma clan. They also knew that he was plotting to overthrow the Guanzhong torture room. At this time, seeing Chu Xiu come to find Chu Yuanxing, they subconsciously thought that Chu Xiu was up to no good. Tanya walked forward and chuckled. His hands trembled slightly, and 2 dragon-tail soul-chasing darts flew out of his hands. They directly smashed the weapons of the 2 people, and even made their hands bleed. It was very frightening. Tanya had a smile on his face, but his words were merciless. Hero Chu Yuanxing is the sworn brother of my master. Why would he need you watchdogs to protect him? Get out of my way. The 2 warriors looked at each other with anger and sorrow in their eyes. They could only step aside helplessly. It was useless to be loyal. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great. They would only die if they rushed forward. Walking into the main hall, they saw Chu Kuanga's coffin. Chu Yuanxing, dressed in mourning clothes, was kneeling and crying in front of the coffin. Father, I am unfilial and incompetent. I actually let you be humiliated after your death. I am incompetent. While crying, Chu Yuanxing heard a voice behind him. He looked back and saw Chu Xiu. Chu Yuanxing couldn't help but say angrily, Chu Xiu, what are you doing here? Back then, I was blind enough to take you into the Guanzhong torture hall. Are you here to laugh at me now? Chu Xiu walked slowly to Chu Kuanga's coffin, picked up 3 incense sticks, lit them with his internal force, and respectfully bowed to Chu Kuanga's coffin 3 times. After inserting the incense sticks, he said to Chu Yuanxing, Brother Chu, I have something to tell you. Chu Yuanxing snorted coldly, Don't call me brother. I don't deserve to have a brother like you, who is the number 1 among the younger generation of the demonic path. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Brother Chu, I'm afraid you have misunderstood me. My identity has nothing to do with my people. With that, Chu Xiu gave Tanya a look. Tanya immediately smiled at the people in the main hall and said, Everyone, please wait outside for a moment. My master wants to talk to Hero Chu about something. The people present, whether they were Chu Yuanxing's servants or some warriors from the Guanzhong torture room, saw this scene and left tactfully. At this time, Chu Xiu happened to be powerful, and looking at Chu Xiu's appearance, he did not have any killing intent towards Chu Yuanxing. It was not worthwhile for them to fight to the death with Chu Xiu because of this. When Chu Yuanxing saw this, he shouted in panic, Chu Xiu, what are you doing? Tanya could not help but shake his head slightly. He had never seen Chu Kuanga, but based on the legends of Chu Kuanga in the past, and even though Chu Kuanga had been dead for decades, there were still Guan Siyu and other warriors from the Guanzhong torture room who were willing to die for him. It seemed that Chu Kuanga could definitely be called an outstanding person of the present age. It was a pity that the son of this legendary outstanding person of the present age was so unbearable. It was simply a disgrace. Chu Xiu forcibly helped Chu Yuanxing to sit on a chair at the side. He looked at Chu Yuanxing and asked without blinking, Brother Chu, ask yourself honestly. Although I am from the Devil Dao, when have my actions harmed the interests of the Guanzhong torture room? And all these years, how many benefits have I obtained for the Guanzhong torture room? It's true that I am from the Devil Dao, but in fact, people in the outside world have misunderstood my Yinma bloodline. My Yinma bloodline was chased by the righteous sections. I had no choice but to conceal my identity and change my identity to mingle in Jianghu. And there are many people like me in Jianghu, even in those big sections. What happened before, now the rumors say that I, Chu Xiu, wanted to seize the Guanzhong torture room. But in fact, if Fang Sha had not colluded with the people of the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, how could things have come to this point? Chu Yuanxing looked at Chu Xiu doubtfully. Chu Xiu was right. All these years in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu did not do much to harm the interests of the Guanzhong torture room. On the contrary, he brought more things to the Guanzhong torture room. But all this could not cover up Chu Xiu's identity as a member of the Devil Dao. So Chu Yuanxing snorted and said, "You have not harmed the interests of the Guanzhong torture room, but you Devil Dao murderers are extremely cunning. You and sister-in-law. It's Mei Qinglian, that witch, who has been lurking in the Guanzhong torture room for so many years. Doesn't she have the slightest ambition? What do you mean by coming here today? You want me to support you to become the new hall master of the Guanzhong torture room? Let me tell you, don't even think about it. Although I, Chu Yuanxing, am a good-for-nothing, I will not do such a thing. Even if you kill me, I will never speak." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Brother Chu, I have said that you are my big brother. Why would I kill you? I really have never thought about the position of the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room. I also know that even if I do not have the identity of a Devil Dao with my qualifications and status, it will be very difficult to sit in this position." Chu Yuanxing frowned and said, "Then why did you come here today?" Chu Xiu pointed to Chu Kuang's coffin and said, "Chu Juxia's mausoleum was insulted. I, Chu Xiu, am still the torturer of the Guanzhong torture room, so I naturally have to come and pay my respects. As for the other thing, it is to invite Brother Chu to inherit the position of the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room." "What did you say?" Chu Yuanxing was shocked by Chu Xiu's words and almost stood up. He never thought that Chu Xiu would say such a thing to him. To be honest, Chu Yuanxing did think about the position of the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room, but that was when he was young. At that time, Chu Yuanxing's ambition was higher than the sky, and he even blamed Chu Kuanga in his heart. Why didn't he leave the position of the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room to his own son, but to an outsider? However, as he grew older, Chu Yuanxing's strength did not increase, and he also saw how much Guan Xiu had sacrificed for the Guanzhong torture room. If it were him, he would not be able to do it. So from then on, Chu Yuanxing gave up on this idea. He did not expect that today, Chu Xiu would propose him to be the hall master. How could Chu Yuanxing not be shocked? After calming down, Chu Yuanxing quickly waved his hand and said, "No, no, how can I be the hall master? In the entire Guanzhong torture room, there are countless people who are stronger than me. If I were to be the hall master, I would destroy the Guanzhong torture room." Chu Xiu leaned forward and looked into Chu Yuanxing's eyes. There seemed to be a bottomless abyss in his eyes, emitting endless light that wanted to devour Chu Yuanxing. "Brother Chu, the situation in the Guanzhong torture room is critical. Hall Master Guan is dead, and there is no martial Dao master in the entire Guanzhong torture room. Strength is no longer the most important thing. Right now, in the entire Guanzhong torture room, the only person who has enough prestige to be the hall master is you, Brother Chu. Moreover, Brother Chu, don't you want to be the hall master yourself? This belongs to you in the first place." Chapter 635. When facing Chu Yuanxing, Chu Xiu did not use much of his spiritual power. He only used his spiritual power to guide Chu Yuanxing's inner emotions. If Chu Yuanxing really did not have any obsession with the position of torture hall master, it would be useless no matter how Chu Xiu guided him. But on the contrary, what Chu Xiu triggered was the desire and inner demons in Chu Yuanxing's heart. Chu Yuanxing looked at Chu Xiu in confusion. "The position of hall master should be mine?" Chu Xiu nodded and said with a serious face, "Of course it should be yours. Brother Chu, think about it carefully. If it wasn't for Lord Chu Kuanga, how could there be the Guanzhong torture room now? You are Lord Chu Kuanga's only son. Is it wrong to pass the Guanzhong torture room to you in the future?" Chu Yuanxing said dejectedly, "I was too useless, so father passed the position of hall master to hall master Guan in the end." Chu Xiu bowed towards Chu Kuanga's coffin and said, "It is precisely because Lord Chu Kuanga is impartial that he did this. Hall Master Guan did not disappoint Lord Chu Kuanga's great trust and developed the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall to this state. But now, Hall Master Guan is dead. In the entire Guanzhong torture room, no one can take this position. Only you, Brother Chu, are different. You are Lord Chu Kuanga's only son. You have status and status. Now that the Guanzhong torture room has no leader, besides you, who else is qualified to take the position of Hall Master? Chu Xiu's words constantly aroused the desire in Chu Yuanqing's heart. The fire in his heart that had long been extinguished and his dream of becoming the Hall Master of the Guanzhong torture room seemed to be so close to him for the first time. However, although Chu Yuanqing was affected by the mental demon rotation technique, the mental demon rotation technique only affected his thoughts. It would not really turn him into an idiotic puppet that did not know how to think. Chu Yuanqing was still a little hesitant. But if I become the Hall Master, how can I convince others? After all, my strength is right there, and I can't even compare to an inspector. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, Brother Chu, you don't have to worry about this. You are my big brother and your wife is Hall Master Guan's widow. We will all stand on your side. No one in the entire Guanzhong torture room will dare to oppose you. As long as Brother Chu agrees, during tomorrow's meeting, I will use my power to help you become the Hall Master. Seeing that Chu Yuanqing was still a little hesitant, Chu Xiu's voice sounded faintly in Chu Yuanqing's ears. Brother Chu, Lord Chu Kuanga's coffin is here. His spirit in heaven is also watching. As a father, all want their children to be successful. Who doesn't want their children to succeed? Lord Chu Kuanga must have the same thoughts, but he died accidentally in the hands of Divine Lord Luo. You are still young, so only Hall Master Guan can inherit this position. Lord Chu Kuanga did it for the good of the entire Guanzhong torture room. But now, no one is fighting with you for this position. Who else but you can be the Hall Master of the Guanzhong torture room? Don't you want to let Lord Chu Kuanga's spirit in heaven see that one day, his son has finally inherited his father's legacy and sat in this position? Chu Xiu's last sentence finally crushed Chu Yuanqing's state of mind. He seemed to have thought something through and let out a long sigh. He looked straight at Chu Xiu and said, I promised you, but I hope that this time, you won't lie to me. Chu Xiu revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth and said, Brother Chu, don't worry. I can lie to anyone but not to you. Patting Chu Yuanqing, who was still a little distracted, Chu Xiu directly turned around and walked out of the Chu family's mansion with Tanya. Tanya said from behind Chu Xiu, My lord, you are now supporting Chu Yuanqing to become the Hall Master. What if he stays in this position for too long and develops some other thoughts? Chu Xiu said lightly, He won't. My brother Chu is actually a very tactful person. This time, if I didn't provoke the desire in his heart, he wouldn't have agreed to take over the Hall Master position. The most important thing is that my brother Chu's ability is really limited. Even if he really wants to, he doesn't have the strength. No matter what, the Guanzhong torture room can only be considered to have a foothold in Jianghu since Chu Kuanga's generation. It's not bad to let it return to the Chu family's hands. Of course, it will only return to the Chu family's hands in name. As long as we can actually control the Guanzhong torture room, then there won't be a problem. Tanya nodded. What Chu Xiu said was right. With Chu Yuanqing's ability and shrewdness, even if he had other thoughts, he would be powerless. The next morning, the meeting in the Guanzhong torture room had already begun. The other 3 disciplinary officers, as well as Si Ming and the other leaders of the punishment department, had already arrived. Among them was Guan Siyu's disciple, Yuqi. Although Yuqi's strength couldn't be compared to the others, he was Guan Siyu's personal disciple, after all. In this kind of situation, he had a certain degree of authority. The meeting hall was dead silent. No one communicated, and no one dared to say anything unnecessary. Because the situation was already clear. If Chu Xiu wanted to become the Hall Master, they couldn't stop him. Whoever stopped him would die. However, being unable to stop him didn't mean that they had no other way. If Chu Xiu insisted on becoming the Hall Master, then the entire Guanzhong torture room would definitely fall apart. At that time, at worst, they could just leave. They couldn't afford to offend him, but couldn't they just hide? Their subordinates were all gone, so there was no point in them continuing to be disciplinary officers. At this moment, Chu Xiu walked into the meeting hall with Chu Yuanqing. When everyone saw that Chu Yuanqing was also there, they were all stunned, but then a look of disdain appeared in their eyes. They all thought that Chu Yuanxing had come to support Chu Xiu and wanted to support him to become the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Yuanxing had a special status in the Guanzhong torture room. No matter how weak his strength was, he was still Chu Kuanga's only son. With this halo alone, he could obtain the respect of all the martial artists in the Guanzhong torture room, even if it was only on the surface. However, at the moment, he wanted to support Chu Xiu, a criminal from the demonic path who had plotted to seize the position of the Guanzhong torture room hall master. This was a bit too degrading, and it was simply a disgrace to Lord Chu Kuanga. However, the next scene made everyone's jaws drop. Chu Xiu did not sit on the main seat, but helped Chu Yuanxing to sit on the main seat. He stood at the side and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, the Guanzhong torture room has suffered a great change, but it cannot be without a leader. Right now, in the Guanzhong torture room, there are very few people who are qualified to take the position of hall master. As the only son of Lord Chu Kuanga, Chu Yuanxing has both prestige and status. I recommend him to be the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room hall master. Does anyone have any objections?" Everyone present looked at each other with surprise in their eyes. No one thought that Chu Xiu would actually make Chu Yuanxing the hall master. Could it be done like this? However, no one present made a sound, because they did not know whether they should agree or not. As the only son of Lord Chu Kuanga, Chu Yuanxing had the status, but as for prestige, at least everyone present knew what kind of person Chu Yuanxing was. He had no prestige at all. Everyone respected him only because they respected Lord Chu Kuanga, and it had nothing to do with Chu Yuanxing himself. Moreover, now that Chu Xiu had personally supported Chu Yuanxing to become the hall master, even an idiot could guess that Chu Yuanxing was just a puppet, and the real mastermind behind the scenes was still Chu Xiu. However, if they did not agree with Chu Yuanxing's status, wouldn't it mean that they were disrespecting Lord Chu Kuanga? This move of Chu Xiu's was truly ingenious. It was simply putting them in a dilemma. Thus, remaining silent was the best choice. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly sneered at Yin Badong and said, "Lord Yin, I know you and I have a grudge before, and now I'm afraid you don't want me to stay in the Guanzhong torture room anymore. But the grudge can be solved later. Now, when the Guanzhong torture room is in chaos, you sent someone out of the city to contact the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. Fang Sha sold the Guanzhong torture room once, and you plan to sell it again?" Seeing that Chu Xiu suddenly pointed the spearhead at him, Yin Badong hurriedly shouted, "Nonsense! I didn't." It was true that Yin Badong had a grudge against Chu Xiu, but it was precisely because of this that he had to be even more careful and low-key at this time, for fear that Chu Xiu would notice him. At this critical time, the Guanzhong torture room was leaderless, and Chu Xiu was in charge. Outside the Guanzhong city, there was a group of Dragon Riders' Imperial Guards and Chu Xiu's subordinates guarding. Even if he had lost his mind, he would not play dirty tricks in the dark at this time to court death. Chu Xiu snorted coldly and said, "You're a traitor, and you still dare to quibble." As his voice fell, Chu Xiu did not give Yin Badong a chance to continue to argue. With a wave of his hand, he exerted the devil blood technique to the extreme. In an instant, all the blood in Yin Badong's body was boiling, his blood vessels burst, and streams of blood were forcibly sucked out of Yin Badong's body. In shock, Yin Badong was just about to use his stellar energy to suppress it, but he saw the stellar energy that was sucked out of his body actually condense into the shape of a scimitar. In an instant, his protective stellar energy was broken, and his head was directly cut off. Two soft thuds were heard. Yin Badong's body and head fell to the ground together. Chu Xiu stood behind Chu Yuanxing and looked at the crowd, saying in a deep voice, "Now, does everyone agree that Chu Yuanxing will be the new hall master of the Guanzhong torture room?" After a moment of silence, Chu Simo was the first to stand up, and he cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, hall master." Among the people present, Chu Simo was the closest to Chu Xiu because of his disciple Chu Xiaoda, and he had spoken up for Chu Xiu before. Most importantly, he was greatly indebted to Chu Kuanga. Now that Chu Yuanxing had taken over the position of hall master of the Guanzhong torture room, he was willing to agree even if he knew that Chu Xiu was the real mastermind behind the Guanzhong torture room. When the others saw this, they could only stand up helplessly, and they cupped their hands and bowed to Chu Yuanxing, saying, "Greetings, Hall Master." At this moment, they were bowing, but no one knew if they were bowing to Chu Yuanxing or to Chu Xiu, who was standing behind Chu Yuanxing. But that was no longer important. What was important was that they had already submitted. Of course, they could choose not to submit. After all, Yin Butong's body was still lying on the ground. Although even they did not know if Yin Batong had done anything, it was obvious that the price of disobedience was death. Chapter 636. Chu Yuanxing taking over as the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room was a big deal for the entire Guanzhong torture room. The people who heard the news felt awkward at first. How could Chu Yuanxing be the hall master? But after thinking about it carefully, if the person who took over the position was not Chu Yuanxing, but Chu Xiu or someone else, they would not be able to accept it. As the situation was settled, Chu Xiu released the restrictions in Guanzhong City. But he sent some of his subordinates to infiltrate various places in Guanzhong. He believed that as long as there was enough time, the Guanzhong torture room would completely become his Chu Xiu Guanzhong torture room. Of course, it was almost the same now. Although Chu Yuanxing was the hall master in name, the one who actually controlled the Guanzhong torture room was still Chu Xiu. After another day, Chu Wuji came to the Guanzhong torture room. He came to find Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian openly. Looking at the two, Chu Wuji showed a strange expression on his face. He said, "What happened? How did it become so chaotic all of a sudden?" Chu Wuji knew the real identity of Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian. They were both lurking in the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Wuji thought that the Guanzhong torture room would definitely change hands if they worked together. But it should not be so hasty and chaotic. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "There was an accident that caused us to be exposed. Our plan was all messed up." Then, Chu Xiu told Chu Wuji in detail what happened in the Guanzhong torture room recently. Chu Wuji furrowed his brows and said, "So it's that H*T-stirrer, Yang Gongdu. That fellow does have some intelligence. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to rise from a lowly talent to the point where he can stir up a storm. However, this guy thought too highly of himself and often looked down on some of the big shots of the Jianghu. As a result, he was ruthlessly beaten in the face and taught a lesson. Fortunately, he was lucky enough to survive until now. It's just that I didn't expect this matter to be related to the Elysium. Yang Gongdu has really kicked an iron plate. The people of the Elysium never follow the rules." Chu Xiu asked curiously, "What kind of existence is the Elysium?" "In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was at its peak, we were also unable to completely drive the heavenly gate off the Kunlun mountain." Chu Wuji shook his head and said, "To be honest, I don't know what kind of existence the Elysium is. Senior Wei should know a little, but it's very vague. The people of the Elysium are powerful, but there's some kind of taboo for them to step out of the Elysium. It seems that only one person can step out of the Elysium every once in a while. Of course, there are times when 2 or more people can step out, but it's very rare. The existence of the Elysium seems to have some kind of mission. As long as you don't conflict with the people of the Elysium on this mission, you don't have to worry about the Elysium finding trouble with you. Just like Chu Kuanga's death. If Chu Kuanga hadn't taken the initiative to stop the people of the Elysium from snatching the treasure, he wouldn't have died. However, Chu Wuji then sneered and said, "As for the fact that the holy cult didn't dominate the West Kunlun mountain range 500 years ago, that was purely because the people of the Elysium were pasting gold on their faces. Many people of the Hidden Devil clan knew about those secrets. Back then, Patriarch Dugu wanted to drive the people of the Elysium away. He even barged into the Elysium alone. Patriarch Dugu killed 8 of the Elysium 9 divine generals of that generation, and crippled one. In the end, Patriarch Dugu fought with the leader of the Elysium sect of that generation and almost shattered half of the Elysium sect. The leader of the Elysium sect of that generation was beaten until he admitted defeat and took the initiative to let Patriarch Dugu enter the Elysium. However, for some unknown reason, after Patriarch Dugu entered the Elysium sect, he didn't continue to drive the half-crippled Elysium sect out of Kunlun Mountain. Instead, he left and gave a piece of land to the Elysium sect. He told the disciples of the holy cult not to continue to attack the Elysium sect. The leader of the Elysium sect of that generation died on the second day after the incident. The only survivor of the 9 divine generals, who was also the crippled one, became the leader of the Elysium sect. He sealed the mountain for 100 years and only reopened it after the holy cult was destroyed. Gradually, people started to step into the martial world and started to boast that even when the Kunlun devil cult was at its peak, the Elysium sect wasn't afraid and could even stand up to them. They didn't know that if it wasn't for Patriarch Dugu showing mercy, the Elysium sect would have been destroyed 8 times over. The current leader of the Elysium sect, Jun Wuxian, is an amazing person. He is the grand disciple of the guy who survived from the hands of Patriarch Dugu. In the past, when he was at his peak, he even wanted to fight for the position of number 1 in the world. Unfortunately, before he could realize this ambition, he was defeated by Zhong Shenxiu and went to cultivate in seclusion. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. It seemed that although the Elysium sect was mysterious, their strength wasn't too exaggerated. Otherwise, the one who ended the Kunlun devil cult and dominated the martial world wouldn't have been Ning Xuanji, but the leader of the Elysium sect of that generation. Chu Wuji said in a deep voice, "All right, let's not talk about these messy things first. Why did you ask me to come this time?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "It's very simple. I want to ask about the attitude of the hidden devil lineage. If I'm not wrong, in the next 1 or 2 days, what happened in the Guanzhong torture room and my identity will spread throughout the martial world. At that time, there will definitely be people who won't let it go and watch me, or rather, the hidden devil lineage will control the Guanzhong torture room. I've sowed a lot of karma. If it's only people of the same generation who come to find trouble with me, I'm not afraid even if Zhong Xian brings people here. But Senior Chu, you also know that for those on the righteous path, they never have to follow any rules when dealing with us, the demons of the demonic path. I killed Jin Yangzi and severely injured Su Xing of the Great Light Temple. This time, I'm afraid the reaction of the large sects is obvious. Although I'm arrogant, I'm not to the extent of being conceited. Now that things have become so big, if I don't have the support of the hidden devil lineage, then I can only conceal my identity and keep a low profile for a while." Chu Wuji raised his eyebrows and said, "You mean that you want the hidden devil lineage to help you resist the experts of the large sects?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Not only me but the entire hidden devil lineage as well. Now that I've completely stabilized the Guanzhong torture room and temporarily control it, I'll leave the Guanzhong torture room. This place is located between the 3 countries. Although its geographical location is sensitive, it's extremely important. If this place becomes the hidden devil lineage's stronghold, it'll be extremely important for the hidden devil lineage's future development. They can quickly advance and retreat from the 3 countries. On the other hand, if the hidden devil lineage doesn't want the Guanzhong torture room, then I can only leave to protect my life." Chu Wuji smiled and said, "Chu Xiu boy, you don't have to provoke me. Don't think that your position is so low, and don't think that the entire hidden devil lineage is so weak. After you entered the Devil Sky realm last time, no matter what the other people of the hidden devil lineage think, you're already the successor of the hidden devil lineage, the strongest of the younger generation of the hidden devil lineage. Now that your identity has been exposed, the hidden devil lineage will not ignore it. Even if not everyone will help you, Senior Wei still has some old friends of the Devil Dao experts, enough to help you block those people. You've only offended a few sects, not the entire Jianghu. This cause and effect, the hidden devil lineage can bear." Hearing Chu Wuji's promise, Chu Xiu was not excited. Instead, he frowned and said, "But there are other problems. If the hidden devil lineage is mobilized on a large scale because of me, will it attract the fear of the righteous Dao sects? Will it cause another war between the righteous Dao and the demonic Dao? After all, last time I used the identity of Lin Yi, I've already caused a lot of trouble." Chu Wuji chuckled and said, "It's because you caused such a big commotion last time, and the major sects did not react too intensely. That's why Senior Wei is confident that those sects will not launch another righteous Dao and devil war. The price of a righteous Dao and devil war is too high. Even the last time at Floating Jade Mountain was not considered a large-scale righteous Dao and devil war. Moreover, my hidden devil lineage has been hiding underground for hundreds of years, but no one said that my hidden devil lineage is destined to be a rat underground for life. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "In that case, I know what to do. Thank you, Senior Chu, and thanks Senior Wei for me." Chu Xiu spent a lot of effort to obtain the power of the Guanzhong torture room. Now, if Chu Xiu gave up, he could only guarantee that he could take away the Ghost Hand King and other confidants. The other warriors of the Guanzhong torture room would definitely not leave with him. It was very important for Chu Xiu to be able to preserve this power. More importantly, as long as Chu Xiu could survive this calamity, the hidden devil lineage would no longer have to hide underground. This also meant that the hidden devil lineage finally had the tendency to completely walk out of the darkness underground. At this time, just as Chu Xiu had expected, as the news of the Guanzhong torture room spread, Crown Prince LV Longji also spread the news of Chu Xiu's identity in a rage when he learned that Yang Gongdu and Eunuch Chen had died in the Guanzhong torture room. There were also some exaggerated statements by Yang Gongdu, which instantly caused an uproar in the entire Jianghu. No one expected Chu Xiu to be Lin Yi, and Lin Yi to be Chu Xiu. Many people knew that a large number of the hidden devil lineage members were hidden in the Jianghu. However, the fake identity of the first on the Longhu list was actually the second on the Longhu list. This was too ironic. Ever since the Wind Sweeping Tower established the Longhu list, there had been outstanding figures on both the Longhu list and the list at the same time. Now, Zhang Qingjun was one of them. However, Chu Xiu was the first person to occupy two rankings at the same time. It would be more or less accurate to say that this was unprecedented. For most people in the Jianghu, this matter was something new and interesting to them. However, for those from the big sects who had a grudge against Chu Xiu or Lin Yi, as well as some other famous warriors on the list, they were all furious after hearing the news. Chu Xiu made them feel like they had been fooled. Chapter 637. Ever since the Kunlun demon sect was annihilated, although the demonic path was on the decline, there were still quite a number of powerful demonic overlords. These people relied on their own strength to stir up a storm in the pugilistic world, and the commotion they caused was actually not small. Chu Xiu's strength naturally could not be compared with those Devil Dao tycoons, but this time he caused quite a stir. He almost fooled the entire Jianghu. When Chu Xiu's identity was exposed, everyone knew that the first and second place on the Longhu list turned out to be guys from the Devil Dao. Some radical people even asked Wind Sweeping Tower to modify the Longhu list and remove the identities of Chu Xiu and Lin Yi, but they were rejected by Wind Sweeping Tower. Wind Sweeping Tower's Dragon and Tiger Storm Supreme list was the brand of Wind Sweeping Tower. This was related to Wind Sweeping Tower's reputation. It was still possible for Wind's Tower to tamper with some of the less important ranking lists. However, when it came to something that the entire world of martial arts knew, Wind's Tower would be slapping themselves in the face if they dared to tamper with it. Therefore, Wind Sweeping Tower only removed Lin Ye's name from the list, but did not remove Chu Xiu's name. He still ranked first on the Longhu list. However, although Wind Sweeping Tower did not take any action, there was already a hint of a storm in Jianghu. Wind Sweeping Tower's matter was not that simple to solve. In the Hedong County of Eastern Qi, in the Chunyang Palace of the Chunyang Dao sect, several old Taoists with white hair and beards were sitting in the hall. One of the old Taoists waved his hand, and the hot pure Yang Gang Qi lit 6 incense sticks. He inserted them into the incense burner in front of the statue of Ancestor Lu in the hall. The name of the Chunyang Dao sect, Lu Chunyang, was well known throughout the Jianghu. In the Taoist branch, there were only a few powerhouses who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Lu Chunyang. The furthest was the ancestor of the Celestial Master Mansion, the first Celestial Master Zhang Ling, and the closest was Ning Xuanji of the true martial arts sect. The strength of this generation of Chunyang Dao sect was not strong, and there was a faint trend of decline. However, the foundation of Chunyang Dao sect was still there. Although the strength of the younger generation was weak, there were still many experts in the older generation. The old Taoist priests in the main hall were all martial Dao masters. The old Taoist priest turned around and said in a deep voice, "Senior brothers, there are rumors that Lin Yi is Chu Xiu. This matter has already spread throughout the pugilistic world. I'm sure all of you have heard about it. Chu Xiu killed my Chunyang Dao sect's disciples in Xiaofan heaven. Even senior brother Zhen Yangzi died in his hands. He insulted my Chunyang Dao sect. This matter must not be let go. I would like to ask the few senior brothers to write a letter to the sect master to let me lead some of the Chunyang Dao sect's disciples to attack the Guanzhong torture room. This old Taoist priest was the martial Dao master of Chunyang Dao sect, Su Yangzi. He was Zhen Yangzi's junior brother and had the best relationship with Zhen Yangzi. The martial artists from Chunyang Dao sect were violent. Zhen Yangzi's death had already made them extremely angry. They even wanted to attack some of the Yinma clan's strongholds to vent their anger. However, the Chunyang Dao sect's sect master was more rational than the other disciples and elders. He also knew that it would be a little difficult for the Chunyang Dao sect to fight against the Yinma clan alone. Even if they could get rid of some of the Yinma clan's strongholds, the other party would not be hurt. On the contrary, the Chunyang Dao sect would suffer greater damage and influence. Therefore, he did not make any move against his men. However, this time, Chu Xiu had fooled the entire pugilistic world. If the Chunyang Dao sect did not do anything, not only would they be laughed at by the entire pugilistic world, how could they face Zhen Yangzi in the netherworld? The other elders of Chunyang Dao sect were also excited when they heard that. However, at that moment, a middle-aged Taoist priest who was dressed a little sloppily opened the door. When he saw the people inside, he chuckled and said, "Martial nephews, are you having a meeting?" Su Yangzi frowned and said, "Shi Yunzi, what are you doing here?" The old Taoists present all showed awkward expressions. This guy was the most unpopular guy in the entire Chunyang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi's seniority in the Chunyang Dao sect was extremely high. He was even one generation higher than them. He could talk to the Chunyang Dao sect's sect master and the few experts from the previous generation of Chunyang Dao sect who were near the end of their lifespans. The reason was that the previous sect master took Shi Yunzi as his last disciple before he died. In fact, Shi Yunzi did not even listen to a word of the previous sect master's teachings. Previously, everyone thought that Shi Yunzi must have some amazing talent or ability. In the end, he only stepped into the oneness of heaven and man at the age of 40. Although it was quite good, compared to the last disciple of Chunyang Dao sect, there was a huge gap between him and what they had imagined. It was fine that Shi Yunzi was weak, but Shi Yunzi always talked about seniority. He would call them martial nephews whenever he saw them. Although they were angry, there was nothing they could do. Shi Yunzi smiled and said, "Senior brother sect master said that once this matter is spread, you will definitely go to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. So, he asked me to inform you. You can go now. There's no need to disturb his closed-door cultivation." Su Yangzi immediately laughed and said, "Sect master really knows my temper. Go and tell the sect master that I will definitely get Chu Xiu's head this time. I will bring it back to the sect and offer it to senior brother Zhen Yangzi." Shi Yun shrugged and said, "I will pass on your words. However, the sect master also wanted me to pass on a message to you. This time, you cannot mobilize too many people. Only the disciples of your line can go. Also, this time, no matter how weak Chu Xiu's side is, Chunyang Dao sect can't make the first move. After so many years, Chunyang Dao sect has been the first bird to stand out. This time, we can't rush forward stupidly." It was unknown whether Su Yangzi heard him or not. He waved his hand and said, "Okay, go and tell the sect master that I understand." Shi Yunzi shook his head. Looking at Su Yangzi's expression, he knew that he most likely didn't hear him. "Martial nephew Su Yangzi, don't ignore the sect master's words. I see that your forehead is dark. I'm afraid this trip is going to be a bad omen." Su Yangzi snorted and said, "With your cultivation, you are going to study the Tao of divination. What can you divine? Don't say such inauspicious things." With that, Su Yangzi turned and left. Behind him, Shi Yunzi shook his head helplessly and sighed. The sect master had thought through many things during this period of seclusion, but there were many people in Chunyang Dao sect who didn't understand. At this time, Chunyang Dao sect wasn't the only one making a move. The Great Light Temple was doing the same. Previously on Mount Ba, Su Xing had been seriously injured by Chu Xiu's 7-demon blade. Since then, he had been recuperating in seclusion. This time, when he heard the news about Chu Xiu, Su Xing was so angry that he wanted to immediately lead the monk disciples of Dharma Hall to the Guanzhong torture room to seek revenge on Chu Xiu. Besides Su Xing, the master of Vajra Hall, Su Yan, and the master of Arhat Hall, Su Hong, stopped Su Xing and tried to persuade him. It's fine if you go alone, but if you want to bring the entire Vajra Hall with you, you have to first talk to the abbot or senior brother Su Yun and get their permission, right? You are now a master of a hall. If you continue to be so willful and mischievous, the abbot might strip you of your master's position in a fit of anger. Su Xing said angrily, the abbot is in seclusion, and senior brother Su Yun is only thinking about the big picture. What if he doesn't allow me to act? I'll act first and report later. I'll just bring people with me and act first. Su Yan and Su Hong shook their heads helplessly. Ever since Su Xing had been seriously injured by Chu Xiu's 7-demon blade on Mount Ba, the anger in his heart seemed to have grown stronger. He was irritable, easily angered, and extremely stubborn. However, Su Yan and Su Hong could only try their best to hold him back. The Great Light Temple's rules were not child's play. If Su Xing really acted recklessly, the Great Light Temple would really strip him of his Master of Vajra Hall status. Su Xing was not the only martial arts grandmaster in the Vajra Hall. The others might not have enough strength and experience, but it was not a problem for them to temporarily replace him. At this moment, a voice came from outside the door. I say, the two of you are meddling too much. If you have a grudge, take revenge. If you have a grudge, take revenge. It's very normal. Don't be a coward, just do it. Junior brother Su Xing, I support you. The two of them looked up and saw the Kongji Zen Hall's master, Su Du, who was dressed in a sloppy monk robe and sipping from a wine gourd. He looked like he was watching a good show. Su Yan said angrily, Senior brother Su Du, can you not add fuel to the fire here? And why are you secretly drinking again? No, you actually dare to drink openly in front of us. I'm going to report this to senior brother Su Yun. Su Du waved the wine gourd in his hand and said, Junior brother Su Yan, you've gone overboard again. Who said that the wine gourd must contain wine? It's just sugar water. There's not a single thing in the first place, so how can there be dust? You have wine in your heart, so when you see the wine gourd, you think it's wine. I have no wine in my heart. Even if I drink wine, it's just cold water. Su Yan and Su Hong looked helpless. They could not be bothered to argue with Su Du, so they pulled Su Xing back. However, at this moment, a young monk came in and reported, Masters, the chief of the memorial villa, Nirenlong, is here to see you. The few of them looked at each other. Even Su Xing stopped struggling, and a look of confusion appeared in his eyes. What was Nirenlong doing at the Great Light Temple? In the past, people from other sects had come to the Great Light Temple, but most of them were from sects that were related to the Buddhist sections. Although the memorial villa was also in the northern Yen, it did not have much interaction with the Great Light Temple. Nirenlong had never been there before. Su Du leaned against the door frame and said lazily, Since he's here to see you, let him in first. Otherwise, people will say that the Great Light Temple is lacking in etiquette. The little monk nodded his head and immediately brought Nirenlong inside. In less than a year, Nirenlong seemed to have aged more than a decade. His hair was completely white, and his body exuded a cold aura. After seeing Su Du and the others, Nirenlong did not say anything. He knelt on the ground under everyone's shocked gazes and said in a low voice, The demon scoundrel Chu Xiu has wreaked havoc in the martial world and is lawless. I implore the Great Light Temple to uphold justice and join forces with the righteous martial world to kill the demon and restore order to the world. Chapter 638. When Nirenlong knelt, Su Xing and the others were shocked. They did not expect Nirenlong to do this. Although the Great Guangming Temple was powerful, a martial Dao Grandmaster was still a martial Dao Grandmaster. Nirenlong, as the chief of the Morgue Villa, was also a figure on the Fengyun list. Yet, he had knelt down in front of them. Even Su Du was stunned. Su Yen quickly helped Nie Renlong up and said, "Villa leader Nie, you don't have to do this. It is the Great Light Temple's duty to exterminate demons and defend justice. We can't afford to do this." Nie Renlong did not stand up. Instead, he shook his head and said, "This time, I'm not only here for the underworld, but also for myself. My poor child, Dong Lu, died tragically in the hands of Chu Xiu. As his father, I can't even find a real target for revenge. How sad and ironic. This time, Chu Xiu's identity has been exposed, and he has incurred the wrath of the people. This person is bold and ruthless. In the future, he will definitely become the leader of the demonic path and bring chaos to the underworld. If I don't kill him now, I'm afraid I won't be able to take revenge in this lifetime. However, the strength of the Morgue village is weak, and Chu Xiu is a rising talent of the hidden demons. He will definitely be protected by the hidden demons. If I want to kill him, it will be extremely difficult." Su Yen frowned and said, "So, Villa leader Nie, you want the Great Light Temple to avenge you?" Nie Renlong shook his head and said, "That's not what I mean. My own vengeance should naturally be avenged by myself. I want to ask the Great Light Temple to uphold justice. I want to use the Great Light Temple's reputation to form a demonic slaying alliance in the northern Yen to kill that villain Chu Xiu together. Chu Xiu is extremely ruthless in the underworld. If we don't kill him now, he will definitely be a great threat to the righteous path in the future. However, the strength of the Morgue village is too weak. If we rashly say something like forming an alliance, I'm afraid people will laugh at us. So, I came to ask the Great Light Temple for help. I am willing to serve the Great Light Temple as the leader of the alliance and command all the righteous path powerhouses in the northern Yen martial world to attack the Guanzhong torture room and destroy that murderer." Su Yen and the others frowned. They did not expect Nie Renlong to say something like this. To be honest, after Chu Xiu's matter, the Great Guangming Temple would definitely want to settle the grudges between them. After all, there were more than one Great Light Temple martial warriors who had died in Chu Xiu. However, regardless of whether it was Su Xing, Su Yen, or the others who wanted to seek revenge on Chu Xiu, none of them had expected Nie Renlong to make such a big deal out of it. Su thought and said, "Nye Lord, I Yen, I have to say. Nye Yen, Nye leader, Yen temple, not. Villa Lord Nye, you can wait first. We will be back soon." Nie Renlong nodded and stood up. He followed a disciple of the Great Light Temple to the guest hall. After Nie Renlong left, Su Yen said, "Let's go. Let's talk to senior brother Su Yun about this." The few of them nodded. Just as they were about to leave, Su Du suddenly laughed and said, "That Nie Renlong is not a simple guy. He talks about killing demons, but he has an inner demon in his heart." Su Yen and the others did not care about Su Du's words. In the Temple of Great Light, Su Du was always behaving irrationally and acting like a lunatic. After a long time, no one took his words seriously. Usually, no one would go to Su Du to discuss serious matters. When the few of them arrived outside Su Yun's temple, they knocked on the door respectfully. They only entered the temple after receiving permission. Their attitude was as respectful as the abbot. At that moment, Su Yun was holding a scripture in the temple. He was reading it while drinking tea under the Bodhi tree. Seeing that everyone had come, Su Yun said, "It's rare for so many of you to come. Did something big happen? Also, Su Du, pour away the wine in your gourd. If I see you breaking the rules in the temple again, you will have to clean the toilets for a month." Su Du's expression changed and he quickly said, "Senior brother Su Yun, you misunderstood. How is this wine? It's just sugar water," the Buddha said. Before Su Du could finish, Su Yun raised his hand and interrupted him. "Didn't the Buddha say why the sugar water in your gourd tastes exactly the same as the osmanthus wine?" Su Yen glared at Su Du angrily. He had thought that Su Du's gourd was filled with sugar water. Su Du smiled embarrassedly and poured out the osmanthus wine in his gourd. However, he then touched his bald head and felt that something was wrong. If senior brother Su Yun had never drunk wine before, how could he smell that the wine in his gourd was osmanthus wine? However, at that moment, Su Yan could no longer care about these messy matters. He told Su Yun about Niarenlong's situation. Su Yun did not express his stance. Instead, he asked Su Yan, "What do you think the Great Light Temple should do about this?" Su Yan thought about it and said, "We should agree to Niarenlong's request. Our Temple of Great Light has a grudge against Chu Xiu to begin with, and the Lurking Devil faction will probably take this opportunity to make a name for themselves. It would be good to take this opportunity to kill the Lurking Devil faction's spirit." Su Yun said calmly, "It's not wrong to agree. If Niarenlong wants to form an alliance, it's fine. However, the Great Light Temple will not be the so-called alliance leader." Su Yan said strangely, "Why? In the entire northern Yen martial world, besides the Great Light Temple, who else is qualified to be the alliance leader? Moreover, this matter can increase the reputation of the Great Light Temple in the northern Yen martial world." Why not? Su Yun shook his head and said, "Even if the Great Light Temple is not the alliance leader, we are still the leader of the northern Yen Buddhist sect. Will this affect our reputation? On the contrary, if there is a deviation in this matter, it will affect the reputation of the Great Light Temple. Therefore, if the Great Light Temple joins the alliance, Niarenlong can use the reputation of the Great Light Temple to increase the reputation of the alliance. However, we will not be the alliance leader." Su Yan said doubtfully, "There is a deviation? The exposure of Chu Xiu's identity has already incurred the wrath of the heavens and the people. How can there be a deviation?" Su Yun said faintly, "Nothing in this world is absolute. It's never wrong to think about defeat before victory. Moreover, don't think that the hidden demon clan is too weak. If they were really weak, they wouldn't have survived until now. This time, you will lead a portion of the elite disciples of the 6 martial institutions. Su Xing will stay in the Great Light Temple for closed-door training." "Why?" Su Xing could not help but ask. He had the greatest grudge with Chu Xiu. After being injured twice, he wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. In the end, he finally had an honorable opportunity, but Su Yun did not let him do it. Su Yun looked at Su Xing and did not say a word. However, his deep eyes seemed to be able to see through Su Xing's heart. It made Su Xing feel a chill from head to toe. He did not dare to say another word. After a long while, Su Yun said indifferently, "The anger in your heart has been completely aroused by Chu Xiu's demonic saber, and your mental state is even on the verge of becoming a demon. How are you going to go in such a situation? It's fine if you want to seek death, but don't bring the disciples of the Great Light Temple to seek death." Su Xing lowered his head after hearing Su Yun's words. He did not dare to say another word. After Su Xing, Su Yan, and Su Hong left, Su Du said with a rare serious expression, "Senior brother, why did you agree to that guy Niarenlong? This person has a guilty conscience. He keeps saying that he wants to get rid of evil for the martial world, that he wants to take revenge for his son, but in reality, as long as the alliance succeeds, whether it is my Great Light Temple or Niarenlong who becomes the alliance leader, as the organizer and initiator, his memorial manor will obtain the greatest reputation." Su Yun leaned against the Bodhi tree behind him and said calmly, "Everyone has an evil spirit in their heart. It may be greed, anger, or obsession. Instead of caring about whether others have ulterior motives, it is better to subdue one's own heart demon. Whatever Niarenlong wants to do has nothing to do with our Temple of Great Light. Whatever he obtains has nothing to do with our Temple of Great Light either. What our Temple of Great Light is concerned about is whether our Temple of Great Light has suffered losses in this matter. It's that simple." Su Du shook his head, turned around, and walked out of Su Yun's temple. As he walked, he said, "It is too tiring to play mind games with you people." Buddha said, "Can't people be more simple?" Behind him, Su Yun closed his eyes and said, "Only in the chaotic world can one cultivate the heart. We can be simple, but the result is that we don't even have the money to gild our Buddha's body. We don't even have enough to feed our disciples." At that moment, in the guest room, when Niarenlong received the Great Light Temple's reply, his eyes were filled with joy, but he forcefully suppressed it. Su Du's guess was right. Nianlong did not come to the Great Light Temple purely to get rid of evil in the martial world. He was not that noble. Taking revenge for his son was one reason, but the more important reason was that he wanted the memorial manor to regain its glory in the martial world. During the time when Ye Donglu died, Nianlong had been heavily injured and turned into a demon. He was almost disheartened. However, he was an ambitious person after all. He used a year to gradually walk out of his depression. He had lost his son, but he still had the memorial manor. In the future, the memorial manor would go down in the history of the martial world. As the first villa master of the memorial manor, his name would also be known in the martial world for tens of thousands of years. Therefore, he formed the alliance this time. 30% of it was to kill Chu Xiu for revenge, and 70% was to raise the reputation of the memorial manor to another level. After receiving the Great Light Temple's reply, Nianlong immediately began to spread the news of the alliance in the northern Yan martial world. In an instant, many people responded. Almost at the same time, there were people in eastern Qi who thought of the same idea as Nianlong. They formed an alliance to kill Chu Xiu for revenge and for their reputation. That force was the Xiahou clan. Chapter 639. Among the people that Chu Xiu had offended, most of them were from eastern Qi and northern Yan. On the contrary, there were not many from western Chu. This was especially so for the Xiahou clan. Not only had Chu Xiu killed Xiahou Zhen's only son with the identity of Lin Yi, but he had also killed many of the Xiahou clan's young disciples. Chu Xiu had also killed Xiahou Zhen's trusted subordinates with his original identity. This hatred was not small, but Xiahou Zhen also knew that it would not be easy to get rid of Chu Xiu with his own strength. The Xiahou clan did not belong to him alone. If he wanted to touch Chu Xiu, he would first have to consider whether someone from the Yinma clan would stand up to stop him. Therefore, the simplest way was to form an alliance and gather the strength of the entire Eastern Qi martial arts world to get rid of Chu Xiu. However, compared to the northern Yan land, the alliance led by the Xiahou clan was slower and weaker. After all, the Xiahou clan had to persuade some Eastern Qi martial arts world forces to help. Moreover, some of those forces were not convinced that the Xiahou clan would be the leader of the alliance. On the other hand, the northern Yan side was much smoother. Although Nianlong was not the strongest in the northern Yan martial arts world, it was undeniable that Nianlong's reputation in the northern Yan martial arts world was much stronger than that of the Xiahou clan in eastern Qi. Most importantly, at the beginning when Nianlong was preparing to establish the alliance, most of the warriors had a wait-and-see attitude. There were even some who were a little disdainful. Nianlong indeed had some fame, but the overall strength of the Morgue village was not strong. If he wanted to be the leader of this alliance, he was afraid that it would not be enough. However, after the people from the Great Light Temple took the initiative to join the alliance, this group of people no longer held back and even rushed to join the alliance. After all, the status of the Great Light Temple was not comparable to the Morgue village. Even the Great Light Temple was in the alliance, so why should others be reserved? On the other hand, the Xiahou clan was not so lucky. Although there was also a Chunyang Dao sect in eastern Qi, the relationship between the Xiahou clan and Chunyang Dao sect was not good. Moreover, Chunyang Dao sect did things in a straightforward manner and did not like to play tricks. At this time, in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu was not cultivating. Instead, he was closely watching the news coming from the outside. Whether it was the Memorial Village or the Xiahou clan, the alliance of the Xiahou clan or Northern Yan land, the Gu clan, or the Xiahou clan had formed an alliance, they were so powerful that there was no need to hide it at all. The Ghost Hand Lord and other Chu Xiu clan side was Chu Xiu clan's Xiu clan. They were already mentally prepared. Their lord's ability to attract hatred was so great. Now that his identity was exposed, there would be no way to resolve this peacefully. There would definitely be many people coming to seek revenge. However, their preparations were to come one after another. Who would have thought that this group of people would make such a big move? They directly formed a powerful alliance in the northern Yan and eastern Qi land and assumed the posture of attacking the Guanzhong torture room by force. The Ghost Hand Lord and the others were panicking, but Chu Xiu, who was sitting in the main seat, was very calm. In the Guanzhong torture room, are there already people preparing to escape? Chu Xiu suddenly asked. The Ghost Hand Lord hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "Indeed, but Lord, all the warriors from the Guanxi land did not escape. Those who escaped were almost all warriors from the other 3 lands. Among them, the Guannan land had the most people. The Guannan penal officer was Yin Batong, who had just been publicly executed by Chu Xiu on a groundless charge. Therefore, among the 4 places in Guanzhong, the Guannan land was the most resistant to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu waved his hand casually and said, "In the face of a great enemy, it's good for some unstable people to leave. They won't get in the way. Don't worry." Mei Qinglian said, "There's no need to worry about them. You should worry about yourself first. The Eastern Qi and the Northern Yen martial arts world are preparing to form an alliance to suppress you. How are you going to stop them? Even if Senior Wei and the others can help you stop those people, they can't stop all of them. If not, you'd better hide in some secret places of the Yinma clan and wait for the storm to pass before coming out." Mei Qinglian's words were for Chu Xiu's own good. She didn't expect that the Jianghu would be so chaotic. It was as if the Guanzhong torture room was going to be completely destroyed. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "It's easy to hide. But if I hide, the foundation of the Guanzhong torture room will be in vain. Besides, if I choose to hide, I won't have a chance to step out into the Jianghu in a short period of time. I have to bear this disaster by myself." Mei Qinglian frowned and said, "But how are you going to bear it? Even if you reach the level of martial arts grandmaster, you can't stop the simultaneous attack of the Eastern Qi and the Northern Yen alliances." Chu Xiu stood up and said in a low voice, "But why do I have to wait until they come to my door before I think of a defensive strategy? Waiting for death and facing the attacks of 2 alliances at the same time is no different from courting death." As his voice trailed off, Chu Xiu said to Ghost Hand Lord in a low voice, "Go, select all the elites of the Guanzhong torture room, and then select 1,000 absolutely loyal martial artists. Tangya and Yen Bugui will lead them to the Northern Yen. At the same time, you will guard the Guanzhong torture room. If anything happens, immediately send someone to contact me. At the same time, hand these secret letters to these people." Chu Xiu threw a few secret letters to Ghost Hand Lord. Mei Qinglian didn't see what was written on them. She frowned and said, "What are you going to do? Also, who are these secret letters intended for?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I've said it before. Sitting and waiting for death isn't my style. Rather than waiting for those 2 clans to form an alliance and attack us, I might as well take the initiative and destroy one of the alliances first. These secret letters are my connections. Don't think that I, Chu Xiu, have enemies all over Jianghu. There is more than one person who is willing to help me in this critical moment." Mei Qinglian looked at Chu Xiu with her mouth agape. She really didn't expect this move. When faced with such a predicament, most people would either think of defense or escape. In the end, Chu Xiu was bold enough to go against the current and counterattack. She didn't know whether to say that Chu Xiu was bold or that Chu Xiu was arrogant. Chu Xiu turned to Mei Qinglian and said, "Saintess, please send a message to Senior Wei and ask him to help me stop the people from the Great Light Temple. The morgue is in the Northern Yen Alliance. Although it's far from the Great Light Temple, with the Great Light Temple's strength and status in the Northern Yen Alliance, I reckon that when I bring people to the Northern Yen Alliance, we will be noticed by the people from the Great Light Temple. I'm not afraid of other people, but if the Great Light Temple's 3 main meditation hall seats come, I won't be able to stop them. Also, help me find Sheng Tianyao." Mei Qinglian asked curiously, "Why are you looking for Sheng Tianyao?" 9 Abandonment Sword. Sheng Tianyao was a martial arts master of the Yinma faction. However, his current identity was a high official of the Northern Yen royal family. He had also helped Chu Xiu to stop Nieren Long. However, to be honest, although Sheng Tianyao's strength was not considered weak, he was not too strong either. It was not very meaningful for Chu Xiu to find him. Moreover, although Sheng Tianyao was also a member of the Yinma clan, he was not a member of Wei Shiya's clan. In the Yinma clan, he did not belong to anyone. He was just a rogue cultivator and a devil Dao grandmaster. The last time he helped Chu Xiu was to give face to Mei Qinglian. It was just a harmless help. However, if he were to help Chu Xiu this time, he would have to face a large group of martial arts masters. Sheng Tianyao most likely would not take the risk. Chu Xiu understood what Mei Qinglian meant. He said in a deep voice, "Of course I'm not going to find Sheng Tianyao for help. I just want to see someone through Sheng Tianyao. Since Nianrenlong knows to borrow the Great Light Temple's power, do you think I don't know how to borrow power?" Mei Qinglian was surprised. "Whose power do you want to borrow?" "The Northern Yan Imperial Court." Although the Jianghu and the Imperial Court often cooperated, most of the time they were on opposing sides. This was especially true for the Northern Yan Imperial Court's actions over the years. There were many articles that could be written about it. Mei Qinglian looked deeply into Chu Xiu's eyes and said, "I hope you are confident this time, and not gambling." Chu Xiu said plainly, "How can there be anything in this world that can be 100% confident? No matter how stable something is, there will always be some variables. In fact, people are gambling every moment of their lives. It's just that I believe that I can win." Regardless of whether Chu Xiu was gambling or just being overconfident, Mei Qinglian was already tied to Chu Xiu's chariot. She could only do as Chu Xiu said. She contacted Wei Shuya and helped Chu Xiu contact Sheng Tianyao. For Sheng Tianyao, if Mei Qinglian really wanted him to expose his identity and help Chu Xiu fight against Nianrenlong's Northern Yan demon-slaying alliance, Sheng Tianyao would probably decline. However, since Mei Qinglian only wanted to help Chu Xiu introduce the Northern Yan Emperor, he could still fulfill this small request. Furthermore, Sheng Tianyao was smart enough not to introduce Chu Xiu himself. After all, his identity was sensitive. If he were to introduce Chu Xiu, who was a member of the demonic Dao, who was in the eye of the storm, it would be easy to expose his identity. He was prepared to introduce Chu Xiu to the Northern Yan Emperor through the 13th Prince, Xiang Chong. The 13th Prince had once wanted to recruit Chu Xiu, but unfortunately, Chu Xiu did not agree. But when he saw Chu Xiu this time, Xiang Chong was very excited. "Brother Chu, have you thought it through and decided to work for me?" Chu Xiu retorted, "Could it be that your highness doesn't know my identity? Now, I'm being hunted down by the righteous martial artists. There are countless people in this world who want me dead." Xiang Chong laughed. "Righteous path? Demonic path? So what? In my eyes, there are only those who can help me and those who can't. As long as Brother Chu agrees to help me, I will do my best to protect you." Xiang Chong looked at Chu Xiu sincerely. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be touched by Xiang Chong's expression. This Prince of Yen could be said to be a model of being courteous. Even though Chu Xiu was in so much trouble, he was still prepared to protect Chu Xiu. However, in actual fact, most of what these guys from the royal family said was false. It was the same for the 13th Prince, the Prince of Yen. Chapter 640. Extraordinary people naturally had their own extraordinary points. Xiang Chong, the 13th Prince, would shine brightly in the battle for the throne of Northern Yen in the future. Compared to the Xiang Chong of the past, Xiang Chong now appeared to be much more mature and experienced. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I appreciate your highness's good intentions. However, since my identity has been exposed, then your highness should know that it is impossible for me to rely on others. Moreover, even if I really rely on your highness, would your highness really dare to use me?" Xiang Chong laughed dryly. Chu Xiu was right. Even if Chu Xiu really relied on him, Xiang Chong would not dare to use Chu Xiu without worry. Diabolism was diabolism after all. Who would dare to rely on someone from diabolism as a confidant? Xiang Chong coughed and said, "I wonder why Brother Chu is looking for me this time?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I would like your highness, Prince of Yen, to introduce me. I would like to see His Majesty." "See, father?" Xiang Chong could not help but frown. Among the many sons of the Northern Yan Emperor Xiang Long, although Xiang Chong was not the strongest, he was the most favored one. It was actually a very simple matter for him to let Xiang Long see Chu Xiu. However, at this critical juncture, Chu Xiu had come to secretly seek an audience with the Northern Yan Emperor. This was too sensitive and Xiang Chong did not dare to act rashly. Chu Xiu said plainly, "Your Highness, don't worry. This is the capital of Northern Yan. I came alone. There are countless experts in the palace. Are you still worried that I will harm His Majesty? Moreover, you don't have to worry that I will speak nonsense. In front of His Majesty, even if I am from the Yinma clan, I will not speak nonsense. Your Highness has helped me this time. I will remember this favor and will definitely return it in the future." Chu Xiu's last sentence moved Xiang Chong. In fact, Xiang Chong really didn't care whether Chu Xiu belonged to the righteous path or the demonic path. As a member of the imperial court, although their attitudes towards the righteous path and the demonic path were somewhat different, the core was the same: vigilance and use. Chu Xiu was now famous. As the most outstanding warrior of the younger generation of the Hidden Devil bloodline, he represented some of the power of the Hidden Devil bloodline. It would not be a bad thing if he could get a favor from him in the future. Therefore, Xiang Chong thought for a moment and said, "Sure, but Brother Chu, father's temper isn't that good. You'd better watch your words." Chu Xiu nodded. Of course, he knew that Xiang Long's temper wasn't good. It would be strange if a ruler who could lead the Northern Yan to counterattack a powerful country like Eastern Qi had a good temper. For hours after Xiang Chong left, an old eunuch led Chu Xiu into the imperial city through a small gate. After all, Chu Xiu's identity was somewhat special. It was somewhat inappropriate for a diabolist to openly enter the imperial city through the gate. Chu Xiu had seen the imperial palace of Eastern Qi. Of course, it was only the periphery, but it was very magnificent. Compared to the imperial palace of Eastern Qi, the Northern Yan imperial palace lacked some luxurious decorations, but it was more dignified and solemn. The entire Northern Yan imperial palace was built in dark colors. The grayish-black ground and the pitch-black palace made people feel slightly depressed. However, the Northern Yan imperial palace was still dark, so it was normal to build the imperial palace like this. Even among the Northern Yan imperial family, even the dragon robes were black in the past, and they worshipped the black dragon. Later, he heard from some necromancers that dragons were respected by the nine-clawed golden dragon. That was why the Northern Yan imperial family changed their dragon robes to gold. Chu Xiu followed the old eunuch to a side hall, where Xiang Chong was already waiting. The lights in the side hall were dim, making the atmosphere even more depressing. At the top sat an old man wearing a dragon robe and a black dragon-patterned blanket. This person was the Northern Yan Emperor, the one who had once joined forces to counterattack Eastern Qi with the power of a weak country, Xiang Long. If one only looked at his appearance, Xiang Long was actually very ordinary, to the point that if he did not wear the dragon robe, he would be an ordinary old man. However, as he opened his squinted eyes, they bloomed with a sharpness like the edge of a knife. In all fairness, among the three emperors of the current world, Xiang Long was the most outstanding one. The Western Chu imperial family was content in a corner, and some of the members of the imperial family did not engage in proper business. Some liked martial arts, and some liked witchcraft and other miscellaneous things. Therefore, in terms of national strength, Western Chu had never been considered strong. Of course, this was also due to the terrain of Western Chu. And the Eastern Qi emperor, Lu Haochang, was famous for being incompetent. Other than living a relatively long life, he had almost no redeeming qualities. Of course, as an emperor, Lu Haochang could not be said to be muddle-headed, he could only be said to be a little lacking in ability. And this Northern Yan emperor, Xiang Long, was recognized by the world as a hero of the current age. Eastern Qi was located in the Central Plains, with a vast territory and abundant resources. At that time, Western Chu was a small country in the south, and Northern Yan was a small country in the north. In any case, in the eyes of Eastern Qi, they were both small countries. At the most serious time, Northern Yan was almost destroyed by Eastern Qi. Until Xiang Long ascended the throne, he forgot to eat and sleep in the early stage, keeping a low profile and patiently developing the national strength. Later on, he joined forces with the Northern Yan martial artists to counterattack Eastern Qi. Yang Gongdu was in charge of these matters in the past. In the end, the behemoth Eastern Qi was defeated by the Northern Yan. Even the Wei Kingdom, which was attached to Eastern Qi, was swallowed by the Northern Yan and became Wei County. If not for the fact that the Northern Yan's foundation was too weak to support a long-range attack on Eastern Qi, Northern Yan might have already become the overlord of the Central Plains. At this time, Xianglong was also looking at Chu Xiu. Rather than saying he was looking, it was more like he was sizing him up. Chu Xiu cupped his hands at Xianglong and greeted, "Greetings, Your Majesty." With a light snort, Xianglong said in a deep voice, "Why are you not kneeling before me?" Chu Xiu replied, "I am not a subject of the Yan Kingdom. Why should I kneel before its king?" Xianglong snorted, "I heard that you, Chu Xiu, are from the Yan Kingdom. What, just because you have some power and background, you don't care about your own country anymore?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Your Majesty, I am afraid you have misunderstood. I only made a name for myself in the Yan Kingdom, but I am not a citizen of the Yan Kingdom. To be precise, I am from Wei County, the Wei County that Your Majesty destroyed. Of course, with my identity, I have long lost my home and country. People say that the demonic path is arrogant and perverse, and I am indeed so. Other than the masters who taught me, I don't even bow to the heavens or the earth." Xianglong laughed coldly, "Don't even bow to the heavens or the earth. You encouraged Xiangchong to bring you to me because you want to use the power of the Northern Yan court to help you fend off this disaster. In the end, you can't even kneel to me. You are an arrogant and rude person, why should I help you?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Your Majesty, you have misunderstood. I am actually not used to asking for help. In this world, any debt can be repaid, but a debt of gratitude is the most difficult. Moreover, the things that I ask for are not necessarily stable. What I like is cooperation, mutual benefit. With benefits in hand, everyone will contribute and no one will lose out." Xianglong was so angry that he laughed, "What a joke! You, Chu Xiu, a junior, dare to come and talk to me about cooperation? Do you think you are qualified to talk to me about cooperation? If it were Wei Shuya of the Yinma clan, it would be more like it. Do you know how much official business I have to deal with every day and how much national affairs I have to think about? You, a junior, came here to waste my time. Do you know what crime it is to deceive the emperor? Or do you think that because you are from the Yinma clan, I dare not kill you?" As he shouted the last word, the aura and killing intent that bloomed from Xianglong's body made even Chu Xiu's heart turn cold. In fact, Xianglong did not have much cultivation in martial arts. For a person of royal birth like him, he might be able to cultivate when he was a prince, but after he ascended to the throne, where would he find the time to cultivate? He could only treat martial arts as something to strengthen his body, supplemented by some elixirs and other things to extend his lifespan. However, because he had to deal with official business every day, he worked too hard, so his lifespan could not be extended by much. On the other hand, mediocre people like Eastern Qi Lu Haochang had less to worry about and lived longer. In terms of strength, Chu Xiu could easily take Xianglong's life with a light flick of his finger. However, Xianglong had fought all over the world, and the number of people who had died by his hand was uncountable. These emperors were the ones who had the most blood on their hands. Moreover, who knew how many martial arts masters loyal to the Northern Yan royal family were lying in ambush around this spacious hall? If Chu Xiu dared to act rashly, he would be the first to die. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, please don't be angry. Although I am a junior in the Yinma clan, my words still carry some weight. Moreover, I know what Your Majesty needs. The people who want to kill me this time are the same kind of people that Your Majesty wants to kill." Xianglong suddenly put away the anger on his face, as if the murderous person just now was not him. He asked calmly, "What do you mean?" Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "In the past, Your Majesty joined forces with the Northern Yan martial artists to fight against the Eastern Qi. It was a brilliant move. Martial arts had no national boundaries, but martial arts sects did. Once the Eastern Qi destroyed the Northern Yan martial artists would inevitably be suppressed by the Eastern Qi martial artists. With the joint forces of the court and the martial artists, we finally counterattacked the Eastern Qi. This is the most outstanding achievement since your majesty ascended the throne. Xianglong's face softened a little. After all, what Chu Xiu said was his proudest achievement. For so many years, from the founding of the Northern Yan to the generation before Xianglong, the Northern Yan had always been suppressed by the Eastern Qi. It was not until his generation that the Northern Yan turned the tables and counterattacked the Eastern Qi, even causing the Eastern Qi to suffer a great loss. Although the Northern Yan was still not on par with the Eastern Qi in terms of foundation, it was widely acknowledged that the Northern Yan was already a superpower that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Eastern Qi. But Chu Xiu then said, "But your majesty should have noticed the repercussions of that battle." The imperial court joined forces with the martial artists to fight against the Eastern Qi, but after the battle, many benefits were distributed to the martial artists of the Northern Yan martial artists. This also caused the martial artists of the Northern Yan martial artists to be so arrogant, to the point where they have no respect for the imperial court of the Northern Yan. Your Majesty should have noticed that the Northern Yan martial artists are too big to shake off. Chapter 641. Chu Xiu had noticed the subtle relationship between the Northern Yan martial world and the Northern Yan imperial court when he was in Northern Yan. They could work together when they were facing a common enemy, but what would happen after that? Even if they did not fall out with each other, there would still be some conflicts. What the imperial court wanted was absolute control over their territories, while the forces of the martial world wanted absolute freedom. For example, sects like the Divine Martial Sect of Southern Yan, Xianglong wished that the Divine Martial Sect had the final say in the land of Southern Yan, and even the imperial court could not do anything about it. Of course, the imperial court would never tolerate such a thing. The Northern Yan martial world was a little weaker, so they did not have the Dragon Riders' imperial army, an armed force that belonged to the imperial court, like Eastern Qi. However, as a mighty ruler, Xianglong would not tolerate any provocation from the Northern Yan martial world, even if they were not powerful enough. Therefore, the Northern Yan martial world could be seen garrisoned around the counties and prefectures of the Northern Yan martial world, to prevent the martial sects of the Northern Yan martial world from going too far. However, it was also because of this that the Northern Yan martial world had to reduce their investment in the borderlands. Of course, the three kingdoms were at a stage of steady development, so it was not possible for them to fight each other for the time being. Xianglong stared at Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Are you trying to say that you can help me deal with those sects of the martial world that do not obey me? Chu Xiu, do you think I will make the same mistake twice? When the Yan kingdom was in danger, I worked with the martial world of the Yan kingdom. Although we managed to defeat Eastern Qi, it caused the martial sects of the Yan kingdom to be unable to get rid of them. Now, if I work with you fiends, I might be able to suppress these martial sects of the Yan kingdom. But what if you take the opportunity to grow stronger? What should I do then? Drive away the wolf from the front door, and let in the tiger from the back door. In the end, the Yan kingdom will have to face a formidable enemy. When I decided to work with the martial world of the Yan kingdom, it was because things had indeed come to a critical juncture. However, the Yan kingdom has not reached that stage yet. Why should I join hands with you bunch of dangerous diabolism villains?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty is wrong. It's safest for you to join hands with the Inma clan because we don't have a stable stronghold. Those martial arts sects have their roots in the Northern Yan. It will be very difficult for His Majesty to completely suppress them, because their foundations are all in the Northern Yan. Your Majesty should know the situation of my Inma lineage. My body is like floating duckweed. If His Majesty cooperates with us, we will be His blades. If the Northern Yan court gives us protection, we will kill for His Majesty. It's that simple. If Your Majesty ever gets tired of using us, you can just throw us away. You can even push all the blame onto us. The imperial court will still be the imperial court. You don't have to worry about us. We will never threaten the interests of the Northern Yan." Xiang Chong stared at Chu Xiu, dumbfounded. How could there be such conditions? Chu Xiu had actually pointed out all of his weaknesses. Wasn't he putting himself in a perilous situation? Xianglong squinted at Chu Xiu. His face was expressionless, and he couldn't see anything wrong. After a while, Xianglong said, "You told me all this. Aren't you afraid that in the end, I will really abandon the Yinma lineage and even kill you? You should know that once the cunning rabbit is dead, the hound will be cooked." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "To be honest, I am afraid, but the entire Yinma lineage is not. In the past, all the righteous sects failed to kill the Yinma lineage. Although the Northern Yen court is strong, it's still not enough. And to say something taboo, if His Majesty doesn't want to use us in the future, just say the word. The Yinma lineage will have other places to go. But if His Majesty wants to be ruthless, it will only make an enemy out of nothing. In short, I came here to borrow the power of the Northern Yen court to overcome this crisis. At the same time, I am also here to hand over a knife to the Northern Yen court. With the knife of the Yinma lineage in hand, I will kill whoever His Majesty wants to kill in the future." Xianglong didn't speak. After a long silence, he suddenly chuckled and said, "You Jianghu people always like to talk about hypocritical principles. Colluding with the evil cult is the scum of the Jianghu. I wonder what the court is doing with the evil cult?" A smile also appeared on Chu Xiu's face. He knew it was a success. Can the matter of the court be called collusion? That's too unpleasant to hear. It's called enlistment. Xianglong stood up and said, "Enlistment? Very well, I don't care if they are righteous or demonic if they can be of use to me. Chu Xiu, I can help you block this crisis, but the Northern Yen court's strength is limited. Although you represent the Yinma lineage, I also know that not all of the Yinma lineage's power will be on my side. So this time, the Northern Yen court will only help you within the limits of our power. We will not use our full strength, and it is impossible for us to use our full strength. If you can live, then what you just said to me will be effective. If you die, then you can only blame your own bad luck." Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Rest assured, Your Majesty. There are countless people in this world who want me dead, but I am still alive and well." With that, Chu Xiu took his leave and left the palace. 13th brother, you may leave as well, Xianglong said. Xiangchong nodded and quickly bowed before leaving the palace. After Xiangchong left, Xianglong said, "Imperial advisor, what do you think of this matter? Is it correct for me to cooperate with Chu Xiu and the Yinma lineage?" In a dark corner, an old man wearing a Taoist robe walked out. The robe the old man wore was very strange. It was pitch black, and the embroidery on the back was not the yin-yang Tai Chi pattern commonly seen in Taoism. Instead, it was an evil yin-yang impermanence diagram. The black and white impermanents were intertwined at an extremely evil angle, forming the shape of a Tai Chi. The more one looked at it, the more evil it seemed. The old man in the Taoist robe had a goatee, and his eyebrows were high. He held a sword in his left hand and a horsetail whisk in his right. He stood behind Xianglong and said in a low, hoarse voice, "I see that this child is rebellious and ambitious. He is a sign of hindrance to his master. If Your Majesty wants to use this person, please be careful. Moreover, the Yinma lineage is not that simple. I have come into contact with them before. They are a group of madmen who want to revive the Kunlun devil cult. We must be very careful when cooperating with them." Xianglong did not say anything. He just laughed and said, "Hindrance to his master? Imperial advisor, you should know that there is no one under the heavens that I can't use. That Yang Gongdu was a talented man, and his ambition was no less than Chu Xiu. But in the end, with just a word from me, he had to leave the Yen kingdom with his tail between his legs. If not for the fact that he had indeed contributed to Great Yen, and some of his meritorious deeds cannot be erased, do you think he could leave the Yen kingdom alive?" Upon hearing that, the old Taoist bowed his head even lower and quickly said, "You are right, Your Majesty. Your Majesty is the Lord of Destiny. Even if Chu Xiu is the rebellious Bone Seven Murders, Your Majesty will still be able to capture him." Xianglong laughed in confusion. While walking to the back, he said, "Rest assured, Imperial advisor. The reason why I'm cooperating with Chu Xiu and the Yinma lineage is just to reduce the losses that Great Yen will suffer when suppressing those forces in the martial world. Chu Xiu is a member of the Yinma lineage, and I've never been able to trust them. You, on the other hand, are my confidant." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The old Taoist bowed his head, but a strange gleam could be seen in his eyes. After leaving the Northern Yen Imperial Palace, Chu Xiu immediately returned to the Guanzhong torture room. At the moment, Wei Xia had arrived at the Guanzhong torture room, and he had brought Zhao Qingping, Luo Sansong, and some other warriors who had followed Chu Xiu to carry out the mission of annihilation. These people were very convinced by Chu Xiu, and they were also shocked when they learned Chu Xiu's identity. This man was indeed extraordinary. It was not strange for a man to have two identities. In fact, many people from the Immortal lineage were like this. But a man had pushed both identities to the first and second place on the Longhu list, which was a little shocking. Moreover, it was not only Luo Sansong and the others who came, but also some warriors from the phaseless demon sect that Mr. Lu had brought with him. After all, the phaseless demon sect was not Wei Shuya's subordinates, and they could only be said to be on good terms with Wei Shuya. Therefore, at this time, the phaseless demon sect had sent Mr. Lu and these warriors to give face to Wei Shuya and Chu Xiu. This was a favor that Chu Xiu had to remember. After seeing Wei Shuya, Chu Xiu told Wei Shuya the conditions that he had discussed with the Northern Yen Emperor Xianglong. After listening, Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiu with a faint smile and said, "You act first and report later?" Chu Xiu said to Xianglong that he could represent the Immortal lineage, or at least the attitude of Wei Shuya's lineage. In the end, after getting Xianglong's reply, Chu Xiu said this to Wei Shuya. What was this if not acting first and reporting later? Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Senior Wei, don't worry about those details. I just made a verbal promise with Xianglong. If you don't agree, at worst, I won't need the support from the Northern Yen side. The deal will be invalid." Wei Shuya looked at Luo Sansong and the others, sighed and said, "I'm old, and it doesn't matter where I stay. But these young people, either because of inheritance or because of coincidence, joined the Immortal lineage and became my subordinates. I can't promote them, but I can't hold them back either. If they follow me, they will always hide in the dark and rarely make a move. If they stay for a long time, they will become useless. It's better to follow you to the Northern Yen and fight for a future." Luo Sansong and the others hurriedly bowed to Wei Shuya and said, "Thank you, Senior Wei." After they joined the Immortal lineage, they rarely made a move. Because of the Immortal lineage's rules, and because they were under Wei Shuya's command, there was not much for them to do. For these warriors in their prime, it was not time for them to cultivate in seclusion all day. Instead of hiding in the dark all day and cultivating with limited resources, it was better to follow Chu Xiu to fight in the outside world. They thanked Wei Shuya. One was to thank Wei Shuya for protecting them all these years, and the other was to thank Wei Shuya for helping them. Chapter 642. Eastern Yen, Leping County, the headquarters of the Mortuary Manor. Usually, there were many martial artists visiting the Mortuary Manor. Now that it was the day of the Alliance, the number of martial artists who came to the Mortuary Manor was even higher. Looking at this scene, Nie Renlong couldn't help but sigh with emotion. If Dong Lu didn't die, the foundation he laid for the Mortuary Manor today and the momentum it created could all be passed down. How happy would Dong Lu be when he saw this scene? Losing a son in middle age was the greatest sorrow. But in the blink of an eye, Nie Renlong had already put away the sorrow in his eyes. For him, now was not the time to grieve. The Mortuary Manor's name would be passed down through the ages. At this time, a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm came to Nie Renlong's side and reported, "Manor Lord, almost everyone is here." Nie Renlong waved his hand and said, "Has the Huangfu clan from the northern drifting snow city arrived?" That person shook his head and said hesitantly, "Not yet, but Manor Lord, the northern drifting snow city and the Mortuary Manor have long had enmity. They shouldn't be coming. As for the Huangfu clan, it would be fine if you invited them to make up the numbers, but you invited the old ancestor of the Huangfu clan. I'm afraid it will be a little difficult." Nie Renlong furrowed his brows. The fact that these two clans did not come was out of his expectations. He had guessed that these two clans would come. The northern drifting snow city did have enmity with Nie Renlong, but this matter involved the entire northern Yen pugilistic world. There was no reason for the northern drifting snow city to be absent. Even if he didn't want to increase the prestige of the mortuary manor, he had to consider his own reputation. Bai Han Tian wasn't a stupid and petty person, he had no reason not to come. As for the Huangfu clan, Nie Renlong had personally sent a letter to them, explaining the importance of their relationship. The Huangfu clan had kept a low profile for so many years, it was time for them to make their presence known. Moreover, the Huangfu clan had already promised Nie Renlong, so there was no reason for them not to keep their word. Nie Renlong frowned and said, "Let's wait for a while. One of these two clans is in the northern lands, and the other is in the western Yen country. I'm afraid there are too many people." After waiting for another 4 hours, there was still no sign of the two sects outside the morgue. Inside the morgue, there was a hubbub of voices. The people inside were probably impatient. Nie Renlong had a bad feeling in his heart, but he couldn't care less at this moment. He said, "Forget it. Let's not wait for those two. The alliance conference will begin immediately." As he spoke, Nie Renlong turned around and entered the morgue. At this moment, the morgue was filled with a hubbub of voices. Seeing Nie Renlong walk in, everyone cupped their hands towards him and said, "Manor Lord Nie." Nie Renlong flicked his sleeves and walked straight to the central high platform. He said in a deep voice, 500 years ago, the Kunlun devil cult wreaked havoc in Jianghu. The demons rose and the righteous martial arts world fell into its darkest moment. Fortunately, the sect leader of the real martial arts sect, Senior Ning Xuanji, took action and killed the devil cult leader, Dugu Weiwei. With the help of countless righteous seniors who fought to the death, the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed and the world returned to its original state. But now, the devil cult has the momentum to make a comeback. Chu Xiu has used two identities to run amok in Jianghu. He has done countless cruel and evil things. Countless people in Jianghu have died tragically in his hands. At this moment, he has even occupied the Guanzhong torture room, causing the hidden devil cult to have the momentum to make a comeback. In the past, our seniors have sacrificed their lives and shed their blood to completely suppress the devil cult. Now that it has come to our generation, how can we let them harm Jianghu again? Today, we are fortunate to have the head of the Vajrayard of the Great Light Temple, Master Su Yen, Master Yen Huainan of the Divine Martial Sect, Sect Leader Fang Datong of the Giant Spirit Sect, and the others to come together to form an alliance. I am extremely grateful for that. At this moment, the martial arts world of Eastern Qi is also preparing to form an alliance to attack the Guanzhong torture room and destroy the evil Chu Xiu. The Northern Yen martial arts world naturally cannot be left behind. Manor Lord Nie is right. Cheers immediately came from below. Especially the martial artists who came from small forces, they were even more excited. Although most of them were actually not interested in killing the devil cult's villains, they were tempted by Nie Renlong's promise. Not to mention things like reputation, now that Chu Xiu was entrenched in the Guanzhong torture room, once the Guanzhong torture room was destroyed, half of the resources and treasures in the Guanzhong torture room would belong to them. As for the people sitting in the main seats, the Great Light Temple did not care about those miscellaneous things, and the Divine Martial Sect also cared about their reputation, so they naturally would not fight with them for those miscellaneous things. Only the Giant Spirit Sect would get a share of the things. The leader of the Giant Spirit Sect, Giant Spirit General, Fang Datong, was a burly middle-aged man. Although he looked rough, he was actually very meticulous. Actually, Fang Datong did not have to come to the alliance at the Memorial Manor this time. The Giant Spirit Sect did not have any grudges with Chu Xiu, and the Giant Spirit Sect had a large number of people. They were mainly in charge of business such as escorts and transportation. They traveled between the three countries and did not belong to any country. However, in Fang Datong's view, this was an opportunity for the Giant Spirit Sect, a chance for them to make a name for themselves in the underworld. All along, the strength of the human and six gangs was relatively weak, so they were not valued by the underworld. Therefore, each gang was thinking of a strategy to develop. Among them, the World Alliance was the strongest. Qin Xingdi had used his iron fists to conquer a vast territory. Even if he was the only one left in the World Alliance, He was enough to support the entire gang. The Memorial Manor was very similar to the World Alliance. They both relied on Nie Renlong's reputation. As long as Nie Renlong did not die, the Memorial Manor would still have this reputation in the underworld. The wind-sweeping building specialized in wind intelligence, so it did not require much strength. The Jiangshan Pavilion was far away in the South China Sea. It was said that it was a gang created by a group of fallen royalty. It rarely participated in the disputes of the Central Plains warriors, so its strength was unknown. The rest of the beggar gang spread throughout the underworld. You would never know which of the seemingly sloppy beggars were real beggars and which were experts of the beggar gang. In short, the beggar gang's strength was a mystery. Not to mention the gang leader who was in seclusion, the beggar gang had never gathered for so many years. Of the 6 great gangs, the weakest one was the Giant Spirit Gang. They didn't even have a target. Although the Giant Spirit sect had a lot of people now, if something happened, the Giant Spirit sect would be the easiest to be removed from the list of the 6 gangs. Therefore, this time, Fang Daong did not even wait for Nie Renlong's invitation and took the initiative to join the alliance. He wanted to fight for a reputation that would bring the Giant Spirit sect into the category of righteous sections. Fang Datong stood up and said in a deep voice, "It's only been a few hundred years since the demonic path wreaked havoc in the underworld. We can't forget this lesson. Although our Giant Spirit sect rose from the wilderness, we also know that everyone has a responsibility for the safety of the underworld. Since Villa Master Nye has gathered all of us here, then I ask Villa Master Nye to take over the position of Alliance Master. We will naturally listen to your orders." When Nie Renlong heard that, an imperceptible smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Fang Datong was very sensible. He, Fang Datong, did not have the chance to take the position of alliance leader. Therefore, pushing him to be the alliance leader now was also a form of good karma. However, Nie Renlong still declined. There are so many famous martial Dao grandmasters and experts from the major sects here. I dare not act rashly. Su Yen said calmly, "Since Villa Master Nye was the one who suggested this alliance, you will naturally be the alliance leader. The Great Light Temple will only be in charge of taking action." Yen Huainan, on the other hand, had the intention to be the leader of this alliance. However, when he saw Fang Datong and the Temple of Great Light's empty words and their attitudes, he also knew how strong they really were. He had no choice but to say, "I have no objections to Manor Lord Nye being the leader of this alliance." Just as Nie Renlong was about to humbly decline and agree, the door to the morgue was suddenly pushed open. Nie Renlong frowned. Who is it that did not abide by the rules? He had already ordered that when the alliance was in progress, no one was allowed to come in and disturb them. However, as the door was pushed open, a thick smell of blood rushed out. This made Nie Renlong's heart sink as he vaguely guessed something. The next moment, demon qi drifted in from outside the morgue. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky and shrouded the entire morgue. Chu Xiao casually tossed aside the 2 corpses that had been turned into dried corpses by the great demon blood technique and said with a smile, "If you ask me, you righteous path people are all hypocrites. You want to give away the position of alliance leader. You obviously want it in your heart, but you say that you don't want it. Now you don't have to fight anymore. Chu have come to you. If you want to kill me, come." As Chu Xiao's voice fell, on the walls of the morgue, Chu Xiao's subordinates, Tangya, Luo Sansong, and the other hidden devil clan martial artists all leaped over the walls. They looked at the people inside the morgue with murderous intent. The demon qi in the periphery was getting stronger and stronger. This was a formation plate refined by Gong Shu Yuan. It was not very useful, but it could isolate the breath and emit strong demon qi. It could suppress the opponent and enhance the strength of the user of the demon skill. In the blink of an eye, the righteous alliance that was still impassioned became the side being besieged. This caused everyone present to be unable to recover from their shock. Why did the roles suddenly turn around? Nie Renlong looked at Chu Xiao and gnashed his teeth. "Chu Xiao, how dare you take the initiative to attack?" Nie Renlong could not wait to swallow Chu Xiao alive when he saw his true enemy who killed his son. Moreover, he really did not expect Chu Xiao to choose this time to take the initiative to attack. The people he had offended in Jianghu were not only the northern Yan, but also the eastern Qi. Chu Xiu's response was either to escape or to fight back. If he took the initiative to attack, was he not afraid that the Guanzhong torture room would be destroyed by the Eastern Qi alliance? Moreover, this was the northern Yan. Where did he get the courage to come to the northern Yan and act presumptuously? Was he not afraid that the righteous sects of the northern Yan would attack and kill him? Chapter 643. All of a sudden, the hunters had become the hunted. Everyone present was not used to it. They had formed an alliance to encircle and annihilate Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu had the audacity to come knocking on their door. However, they soon sneered inwardly. This was the northern Yan. Chu Xiu had come knocking on their door in broad daylight with such an arrogant attitude. By now, the Great Light Temple and other righteous sects must have noticed. As long as they could delay them for a while, Chu Xiu and the others would not be able to leave northern Yan. Nirenlong said coldly, "Chu Xiu, since you have come to seek your own death, it will save us some effort. We will first keep all of you in northern Yan, then we will break into the Guanzhong torture room and capture all of you demonic cultivators in one fell swoop." Chu Xiu's lips curled into a cold smile as he said, "Manor Lord Nye, I'm actually a very soft-hearted person at times. You're already so old and you've lost your son in your middle age. You must be very sad, so I'm prepared to fulfill your wish and send you down to reunite with your son. How about it?" Nirenlong's expression immediately turned extremely dark. He was just about to curse out angrily when Chu Xiu waved his hand and bellowed, "Kill!" As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic cultivators immediately pulled out the weapons in their hands. With the support of the formation's demonic energy, they charged towards the people below. Although Wei Shuya and the Northern Yan Imperial Court could help Chu Xiu block part of the forces, this was Northern Yan after all. It was better to end the battle quickly. Most importantly, Chu Xiu did not know the extent of the alliance with Eastern Qi. A sneak attack could only be used once. When he returned to the Guanzhong torture room, he would have to face a tough battle. Therefore, the Northern Yan side had to end the battle quickly so that he could prepare for his return to the Guanzhong torture room. Although Chu Xiu was ridiculing Nirenlong, the expressions of Su Yan and the others were not looking too good either. Chu Xiu's actions were a blatant insult to the entire Northern Yan sect and the martial arts world. Just as they were about to make a move, they saw three figures standing in front of Su Yan and the others. They were Mei Qinglian, Mr. Lu, and Lu Hongye. Mei Qinglian was the strongest. She directly faced off against the Temple of Great Light's empty words. The great art of the beautiful girl was extremely evil. Although Mei Qinglian's martial arts were not strong in a direct confrontation, her fighting skills were top-notch. Even though Su Yan's explosive power was astonishing, he could not defeat Mei Qinglian in a short time. Mr. Lu's opponent was Yan Huainan of the Divine Force sect. Yan Huainan was ranked on the Windcloud roll and was considered a talent of his generation. The reason the Divine Force sect was able to become one of the 7 sects and 8 schools was all because of Yan Huainan. However, Mr. Lu's strength was not weak either. When he was at the oneness of heaven and man realm, he was an expert at the pinnacle of this realm. Now that he had entered the Grandmaster realm, his strength actually far surpassed many other martial artists of the same level. After Mr. Lu entered the Grandmaster realm, he had long wanted to find a famous expert in the martial arts world to spar with and test out his skills. However, he had never been able to do so. Now, his wish was finally fulfilled. The only one who was at a disadvantage was Lu Hongye. Although he was also a martial Dao master, he had only been a martial Dao master for a short period of time and he was not as talented as Mr. Lu. Furthermore, due to the inheritance, Lu Hongye's martial arts could not compare to Fang Datong of the Giant Spirit Gang. After exchanging a few blows, he was already at a disadvantage. However, Chu Xiu did not ask too much of him. It was fine as long as Lu Hongye could hold on for a short time without being defeated. Endless demonic aura surged into Chu Xiu's body. Chu Xiu's strength was raised to the extreme. Chu Xiu was already holding the hatred saber of the 7 demon sabers in his hand. As he slashed down with the saber, majestic demonic aura surged into it, triggering boundless hatred. As soon as the battle ended, Chu Xiu used his ultimate killing move. There was hatred in Nianlong's heart, and it was boundless hatred. The death of his son was absolutely irreconcilable. At that moment, Chu Xiu stood before Nianlong. Even without using the seven-demon saber, Chu Xiu could sense Nianlong's hatred. Therefore, using the hatred saber at that moment was undoubtedly a good choice. The instant Chu Xiu drew his saber, Nianlong laughed maniacally. His entire body was enveloped by the hatred of the hatred saber, but he did not choose to fight it head-on. Instead, he took the initiative to fuse with the hatred in his heart. In that instant, Nianlong's eyes turned crimson. Wisps of demonic aura surged into his body. The demonic aura released by the array was originally prepared for the demonic cultivators on Chu Xiu's side. However, at that moment, it could take the initiative to surge into Nianlong's body. With a loud bang, the demonic aura around Nianlong exploded. It was even more intense than Chu Xiu's. When he used the heaven and earth cloud hand, what he stirred was not the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but the boundless demonic aura. As he moved his hands, the demonic aura condensed into a cyclone, directly enveloping Chu Xiu. Before the hatred saber landed, the momentum of the saber had already been shattered. Chu Xiu's body was torn apart in the cyclone. In the end, with a loud bang, Chu Xiu's entire body was sent flying more than 10 feet away. After calming the boiling blood in his body, Chu Xiu put away the seven-demon saber. There was a solemn look in his eyes. The seven-demon saber was useless to Nianlong. In fact, Nianlong's strength had increased tremendously. He was a lot stronger than before he entered the demonic state. His eyes were crimson, but he still maintained his rationality. Surrounded by demonic aura, Nianlong, who looked more like a demonic cultivator than Chu Xiu, said coldly, "Chu Xiu, this is all thanks to you." Entering the demonic state was a crisis, but it was also an opportunity. The last time Nianlong entered the demonic state because of Nie Donglio's death, he was also severely injured. However, after he recovered, he adapted to the powerful strength that came with entering the demonic state. He also adapted to the attribute of the demonic aura. Nianlong had never cultivated demonic techniques, but he did not die after entering the demonic state once. His demonic nature was already natural. Although the hatred saber could trigger the hatred in Nianlong's heart, Nianlong's hatred had reached its peak after Nie Donglio's death and entering the demonic state. The hatred triggered by external objects naturally could not reach the level of entering the demonic state. Therefore, the hatred saber was useless to Nianlong now. It could even help him increase part of his strength. After throwing the seven-demon saber into the secret space box, Chu Xiu frowned slightly. He had miscalculated. It seemed that he had underestimated Nianlong. People like Nianlong, who were born in the wilderness, were able to reach their current status. They were all outstanding people. Not a single one of them was simple. The previous incident was a disaster for Nianlong, but it was also an opportunity. If he could get through it, his strength would improve greatly. Nianlong's palm fell, and the monstrous demonic aura covered the sky. The giant demonic aura, which was dozens of feet long, suddenly fell and smashed towards Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu moved and changed his position continuously. However, the giant demonic aura grabbed at the empty space. Wisps of demonic aura bloomed in a strange rhythm. The demonic aura was pulled by the giant demonic aura. It was like a cage, imprisoning Chu Xiu within it. In the end, it directly squeezed down, as if it wanted to crush Chu Xiu into pieces. Chu Xiu's hands formed a seal. Golden Buddha's light bloomed around his body. The sound of Sanskrit resounded between heaven and earth. A golden Vairocana shadow appeared behind Chu Xiu. In the giant demonic aura, a dazzling holy Buddha's light bloomed. Sun-changing technique. The demon-subduing Buddha's light shone between heaven and earth. Chu Xiu finally broke free from the giant demonic aura. However, this scene made everyone present feel very uncomfortable. Nianlong was the leader of the Northern Yen Orthodox martial world. And Chu Xiu was the demonic cultivator they wanted to kill. But now, Chu Xiu's attack was holy Buddha's light, while Niarenlong's was monstrous demonic aura. No matter how they looked at it, it was as if their identities were reversed. Niarenlong looked at Chu Xiu, whose face was a little pale. He approached step by step and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you took the initiative to come here today. When the other Northern Yen Orthodox sects come, none of you will be able to escape." Chu Xiu let out a long sigh and said indifferently, "Don't worry, the others won't be coming. Manor Lord Nya, don't tell me you still haven't realized why the Drifts Now City and the Huangfu clan have yet to arrive?" Niarenlong frowned slightly. Did the Yinma clan intercept them? It's impossible for the Yinma clan to mobilize all of them. Do you really want another war between the righteous and the demonic? Niarenlong knew very well about the attack on the Guanzhong torture room to kill Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was a member of the Yinma clan, but he couldn't represent the entire Yinma clan. Even if Chu Xiu was the true heir of the Kunlun devil cult and the successor of Duga Weiwei, the Yinma clan wouldn't risk everything for him and start another war between the righteous and the demonic. Having been in Jianghu for so long, Niarenlong naturally knew that compared with the bright demon lineage and the moon-worshipping sect, the hidden demon lineage actually did not have a real leader. Their model was also very similar to the alliance, an alliance without a leader. If something happened to Chu Xiu, Wei Shiya's clan might intervene, but as for the others, they might not even intervene. Unless a true expert like Duga Weiwei appeared and unified the demonic path, no one could command the entire Yinma clan. Niarenlong couldn't figure out how Chu Xiu had stopped the other Northern Yen martial arts forces. In fact, just as he was about to go on stage, Wei Shiya and the others had already made their move. At this moment in the Great Light Temple, a flustered disciple of the Great Light Temple ran to Su Xing's residence and reported loudly, "Chief, there's news from outside that Chu Xiu has brought a large number of warriors from the Guanzhong torture room and the Yinma clan into the Northern Yen." He didn't hide his tracks at all and went straight to the memorial hall. When Su Xing heard this, he immediately exploded and snorted coldly, "How dare he? He actually dared to take the initiative to attack. Gather the disciples of the Dharma court and prepare to leave immediately." But then Su Xing thought of something and snorted softly, "I'll go and talk to senior brother Su Yun first." Now that he was still being punished to go into seclusion, the consequences would not be as simple as being punished to go into seclusion. Chapter 644. In Su Yun's meditation hall, Su Xing originally thought that Su Yun would ask him to follow him to the memorial hall after he reported to Su Yun. However, after Su Yun heard that, he called a disciple and said, "Go find Su Du, ask him to go to the memorial hall with me." Su Xing hurriedly said, "Senior brother, then I." Su Yun glanced at him and said plainly, "Continue to cultivate in seclusion in the Great Light Temple. If you don't completely suppress the anger in your heart within a year, forget about the Great Light Temple, you don't even need to be the Dharma court's first seat. The appointment or pardon of the first seats of the 6 martial academies should be decided by the abbot." However, in the Great Light Temple, Su Yun had this power and ability. Hearing Su Yun say this, Su Xing did not dare to refute at all. He could only return to the Dharma court and continue cultivating in seclusion. After a while, Su Du lazily came to Su Yun's meditation hall. He was still carrying a wine gourd, but this time, the wine gourd was filled with sugar water. "Follow me to the memorial hall," Su Yun said in a deep voice. This time, Su Du did not continue to talk nonsense. He obediently followed Su Yun and left the Great Light Temple. Although he was a little unreliable and indecent most of the time, he would not delay matters related to the Great Light Temple. However, as they walked, Su Du said, "Senior brother, has the kid from the hidden devil lineage lost his mind? At this time, instead of guarding his Guanzhong torture room, he dares to come to the Northern Yen. Does he not want to die fast enough?" Su Yun said plainly, "Don't think of others as idiots on the spot. Once something happens, it has its own reason. Maybe we don't need to go to the memorial hall. Someone will take the initiative to find us." Su Du touched his bald head. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly heard a voice say, Master Su Yun, you really have great foresight. I haven't seen you for a long time. It seems that your vain heavenly freedom scripture has improved again. Wei Shuya was dressed in black. He squinted his eyes and stood by the side of the road like an ordinary old man sunbathing. Chu Wuji stood behind him with a sharp gaze and did not say a word. Su Yun looked at Wei Shuya and chanted, Amitba. So it's Elder Wei. After so many years, aside from the Battle of Mount Fuyu, this is the second time you've taken action. It seems that Chu Xiu is really someone you value for you to take action personally. Du looked at Su Yun in surprise. He knew his senior brother's character. He was a monk but he didn't. He knew his senior brother's character. He didn't like Yun. He only said it when he saw that Shuya, this old fellow who looked like he was about to be buried, was actually so terrifying. Was he worthy of senior brother's attention? This Su was so. Was that old was terrifying. Was Yun. Was. Yun, he said. Sect, Yun, is Yun go. Su Yun go back. Our demonic path has been suppressed by the righteous path for so many years. It's time for us to come out and bask in the sun. Eastern Qi, Northern Yen, and Western Chu. Our hidden devil path doesn't occupy them. We're just showing our heads in the Guanzhong torture room. Do you want to stop us? Don't go overboard. Su Yun said calmly, since the hidden devil path has declined, why don't we continue to decline? Elder Wei, you're the only survivor of the Battle of Nine Heaven Mountain. You should know how cruel that battle was. 4 of your 9 heaven mountains, 5 sky demons died. Countless demonic path martial artists died. If you chose to continue tolerating and not openly restore the Kunlun devil cult, so many people wouldn't have died. If you hide underground, you can live. If you show yourself, you will die. You let Chu Xiu do this. You're not helping him. You're harming him. When he really touches the bottom line of the righteous path, I won't be the only one to make a move. Wei Shuya's squinted eyes slowly opened. His expression was extremely sharp. The aura on his body also gradually rose. From an old man who looked like he had 1 foot in the grave, he became the demonic path's overlord who stirred up the world in the past. Why don't you tolerate? For so many years, our hidden devil path has always been called earth mice. If I'm afraid of being an earth mouse for too long, I'll really become a group of cowardly mice who are greedy for life and afraid of death. While I'm still alive, I'll leave some courage for the young people. I'll be an example. If an old man like me is afraid of death, then the hidden devil path will really have no hope. Even if Patriarch Dugu comes back to life, I'm afraid he won't be interested in trash like us. Su Yun, there are only 2 people in the Great Light Temple that I'm not confident in dealing with. One is your abbot, and the other is you. It's said that the Dantian Great Freedom Scripture combines the essence of the Zen and Tantric sections. Today, I'd like to experience it for myself. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic flames around Wei Shuya soared into the sky, and a terrifying power erupted from his seemingly old body. He took a step forward, and the heavens and earth darkened as he punched out. The demon god was shocked and enraged. Su Yun sighed. He recited the scripture, and the murmuring of Sanskrit could be faintly heard from heaven and earth. A golden Buddhist light enveloped his entire body. As Su Yun took a step forward, it actually turned into a domain. Everywhere Su Yun passed, it all turned into a domain. With every step he took, he became a Buddhist land. With every step he took, he became a Buddhist land. Of these 2 people, one was the only survivor of the 9 great heavenly demons in the past. He had once stirred up the Jianghu with his weak strength and fought against the entire righteous path of martial arts. On the other hand, the other person was a rare genius from the Great Light Temple in recent years. As the first seat of wishful thought Zen Hall, he had suppressed the abbot's limelight. The might of the battle between the 2 of them could be said to be earth-shattering. Su Du put away the wine gourd and smiled at Chu Wuji. Don't just stand there. Let's hurry up and get started. The sooner we finish, the better. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Du's body was shrouded in Buddhist light. He, who originally looked a little indecent, was now solemn. He pinched the demon-subduing seal, and when the seal fell, the Buddha subdued the demon and suppressed the world. The power was extremely fierce and terrifying. Chu Wuji also sneered. A blood moon loomed behind him. He had no saber in his hand, but he used the blood moon as a blade to tear the world apart. Two true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses fought with two martial arts masters at the peak of the real pellet state. The power was earth-shattering. Even if a small mountain was smashed, it would not be surprising. At this moment, 100 miles away from the battle, the northern fluttering snow city lord by Han Tian was also preparing to bring his men to the morgue. However, he was stopped by someone. The person who stopped him was none other than Pang Hu and the Chilean Iron Cavalry under his command. Last time, the morgue joined forces with the Eastern Yen martial arts to annihilate the Chilean Iron Cavalry. In the end, Chu Xiu plotted to let the northern floating snow city intervene. In the end, the morgue and Chilean Iron Camp were both severely damaged. The only one who benefited was the northern floating snow city. Bai Han Tian looked at Pang Hu and said coldly, "Pang Hu, with the strength of your Chilean Iron Camp, you dare to intervene in the matter between the Northern Yen martial arts and the Yinma clan. Are you courting death?" Pang Hu sneered and said, "Courting death? I'm afraid your northern floating snow city doesn't have the right to kill me. Last time, it was Lin Yi. No, it should be Chu Xiu who helped me. I, Pang Hu, am a crude man. The northern 36 bandits are just a bunch of bandits. However, even if they were bandits, they still had to be moral. They helped me last time. If I turn a blind eye this time, I'm afraid my brothers will look down on me. Don't you think so?" The Chilean Iron Camp bandits behind Pang Hu shouted one after another. Their aura was extraordinary. Bai Han Tian frowned and snorted coldly, "Ignorant. If you want to die, I'll grant your wish." With a wave of Bai Han Tian's hand, a group of northern floating snow city warriors rushed forward. The northern floating snow city was one of the major sects in the Jianghu, one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Compared to the Chilean Iron Camp, which was a bandit force, they still had a great advantage. The northern lands were in a mess. At the same time, in the west of Yen, outside the gates of the Huangfu clan, thousands of northern Yen soldiers dressed in black armor had surrounded the Huangfu clan's mansion. Among the soldiers, there was an extremely luxurious black dragon carriage. A middle-aged warrior dressed in a black python robe was lying on it. His posture was graceful, and he was yawning as he slowly peeled a banana. Being in the northern Yen lands, yet being able to eat bananas that were only grown in the western Chu southern barbarians, such extravagant behavior was comparable to that of an emperor. In fact, this person was indeed of royal birth. The black dragon carriage that he sat in could only be used by an emperor. However, the northern Yen did not respect the black dragon anymore, so no one would say anything about him sitting in the black dragon carriage. This was because many people in the northern Yen knew that he would not rebel against anyone in the royal family. This guy was just lazy. This person was from the northern Yen royal family. His name was Xiang Wu, but he was a collateral relative of the royal family. His bloodline was very faint and was not valued. Even Xiang Wu's title was only a marquis. Because his fief was in the northern Yan's Linping prefecture, his title was Marquis of Linping. Xiang Wu showed amazing martial arts talent when he was young. However, because his bloodline was not valued too much, he was ignored by the northern Yen royal family. This caused Xiang Wu to wander around in Jianghu. It was not until he made a name for himself in Jianghu that he was discovered by the northern Yen royal family and was immediately summoned back to the royal family. Xiang Long was indeed a great ruler. After discovering his negligence, he treated Xiang Wu with enough respect. He personally found a strong ancestor of the royal family to teach Xiang Wu and recognized him as a younger brother. He gave him the command of the West Hill Army of the 5 armies of the kingdom and gave him the title of general. He even wanted to raise his title to the rank of king. However, Xiang Wu refused. In his words, this was something left behind by his ancestor and could not be lost. He did not know if his ancestor would be so angry that he would open his own coffin if he knew that his descendants did not want the title of king, but still held the title of marquis as a treasure. Chapter 645. Jianghu was sent by Xiang Long to deal with the Huangfu clan. It was said that even the old ancestor of the Huangfu clan, who had always been in seclusion, would be mobilized, which was why Xiang Long sent Jianghu. It was said that the Huangfu clan's old ancestor had the strength of the true fire spirit refinement state. Although Jianghu had not reached the true fire spirit refinement state, he was not far from it. The Northern Yan royal family's old ancestor had once said that in terms of strategy, among the modern Northern Yan emperors, few could compare with Xiang Long. In terms of talent in martial Dao, not to mention the Northern Yan royal family, even in the entire Jianghu, Xianghu was one of the top ones. With Xianghu and the pressure from the Northern Yan imperial court, the Huangfu clan should know what to do as long as they were not out of their minds. At this time, besides Xianghu, a martial Dao grandmaster with a scholarly demeanor and clad in battle armor said helplessly, "Mar." Xianghu handed him a banana and said, "Mind the occasion, call me General." The middle-aged man took the banana and said, "General, although His Majesty has decided to cooperate with Chu Xiu this time, he only asked you to stop the Huangfu clan. But now, you have surrounded the Huangfu clan. Don't you think it's a little too much?" Xianghu took a bite of the banana and said, "Too much? Do you know why His Majesty wants to cooperate with Chu Xiu? To be precise, he wants to cooperate with the hidden demon clan because these Jianghu people have crossed the line. It's time to teach them a lesson. Even if I go a little too far, His Majesty won't blame me, let alone besieging the Huangfu clan. Do you believe me? By the way, Old Yin, I remember that you have interacted with this Chu Xiu before? This kid is quite a talent. What do you think?" This seemingly elegant middle-aged man used to be the general of the mountain calming army, Jianghu in Luohua, who was responsible for guarding East Yen and other places. He also had the strength of a martial Dao grandmaster. In the past, when Chu Xiu was an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society, there were people from the mountain subduing army who were involved in the extermination of the Yao family. However, at that time, Chu Xiu was just a small-time assassin in the Blue Dragon Society, and Yin Luohua was a general who was about to step into the martial Dao grandmaster realm. He only asked about Chu Xiu a little, but he didn't have any contact with him. Later, Yin Luohua stepped into the realm of Wu Dao grandmaster and was transferred to the West Hill Army, one of the 5 national armies, as a deputy general. Since then he had no contact with Chu Xiu. Therefore, Yin Luohua just shook his head and said, "I've only heard of Chu Xiu in the past. After all, Chu Xiu is actually quite famous in East Yen. When he was young, he was already ruthless. Moreover, he acted boldly and decisively. One could tell that he was not an ordinary person. It's just that there are many outstanding talents in Jianghu. Most people want to stand out, but what they lack is luck. For Chu Xiu to be able to reach this step, it's really a stroke of luck." Xianghu chuckled and said, "Luck? Luck can make people temporarily reach a high position, but it can't help them for a lifetime. For Chu Xiu to be able to come this far, he didn't just rely on luck. Even I'm a little curious about this lad." At this time, Xianghu suddenly looked at Yin Luohua and said, "I say, Old Yin, why don't you eat it? I specially asked people to transport this thing from the southern barbaric land. One is more expensive than a pot of 10-leaf fragrance in the drunken Immortal house. It can strengthen one's sex drive and is very nourishing." Yin Luohua looked at the banana in his hand and said with a strange face, "I say, No, General, don't lie to me. My mother was born in the southern barbaric land. I stayed there for a period of time when I was young. This thing is all over the trees there. It's not valuable. Some of the local barbarians eat it as a meal." Xianghu snorted disdainfully and said, "Don't you know that form complements form? I have consulted Imperial Physician Wen, and Imperial Physician Wen told me so. You see, this thing is so yellow, so thick, so long. At first glance, it can strengthen one's sex drive." Yin Luohua looked at the banana in his hand. He often ate this thing when he was young, but now that Xianghu said this, he seemed to be unable to eat it. At the same time, Yin Luohua was also speechless to the extreme. In the past, when Yin Luohua was the general of the mountain subduing army, he was also famous for his vicious and gloomy means. Otherwise, he wouldn't get the nickname Jianghu. As a result, when he was transferred to Xiangwu's command, he suddenly felt that his outlook on life had somewhat collapsed. It was this general of the West Hill Army who seemed to have been transferred to the extreme. Every time after Yin Luohua said his plan, he directly crushed everything with his strength. At the same time, he also destroyed Yin Luohua's outlook on life. When one's strength was strong to a certain extent, one could indeed ignore any intrigues. Just when Yin Luohua was hesitating whether he should give face to Marquis and eat the banana or not, the door of the Huangfu clan was suddenly opened. A group of Huangfu clan's disciples came out. There were at least 1,000 of them, and they were aggressive. The leader was an old man in a golden robe. His hair and beard were all white. He looked very old, but his figure was straight, and a dignified momentum arose spontaneously. Behind the old man were 3 warriors at the martial Dao Grand Master level. Among them was Huangfu Weiming, who had dealt with Chu Xiu in Xiaofan Heaven. The Huangfu clan had always been very low-key among the 9 great families. Of course, the reason why they kept a low profile was because they were not strong enough. In fact, when the Huangfu clan was at its peak, they even competed with the Shangshueying clan for the position of the top of the 9 great families. However, although the Huangfu clan was still in a declining stage, there was still a patriarch who had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm guarding the clan and 3 martial Dao grandmasters who were not weak. This strength was already considered very strong among the 9 great families, but for the current Huangfu clan, it was obviously not enough. The Huangfu clan's patriarch said in a deep voice, "So it's Marquis Xiang. I don't know what you mean by this. You even sent troops to surround the Huangfu clan." During this period of time, the Huangfu clan did not seem to have done anything against the laws of the imperial court, right? Even if the imperial court wants to touch the Huangfu clan, there must be a reason. Otherwise, the Huangfu clan must get an explanation even if we have to sacrifice our last disciple. Even if we don't get an explanation today, there will be other martial artists who will get it for us in the future. Patriarch Huangfu believed that the imperial court would not do something like that without a proper explanation. This was not because the Northern Yan imperial court was very particular about the rules, but because they did not dare to do so. The imperial court's advantage was their numbers, but what was the Jianghu's advantage? Wherever there were people, it was the Jianghu. The Northern Yan imperial court was indeed powerful, but if the imperial court went overboard and angered the Northern Yan martial world, the entire Northern Yan martial world might unite and change the dynasty, forcing the Northern Yan royal family to change their surname. If the Northern Yan imperial court really dared to destroy the Huangfu clan without saying a word, the consequences would be severe. If a force like the Huangfu clan was annihilated by the imperial court without saying a word, then it was easy to imagine what would happen to the other sects that were weaker than the Huangfu clan. Therefore, Patriarch Huangfu believed that the imperial court would not do something so stupid. Xiangwu laughed. "Senior Huangfu, you've misunderstood. The Huangfu clan is doing fine. Why would the imperial court touch you?" Ancestor Huangfu snorted coldly. He pointed at the armored elites of the West Hill Army and said coldly, "Then what do these people mean? Marquis, did you come to my Huangfu clan with such great fanfare just to enjoy the scenery?" Xiangwu stood up and laughed. "It's a refreshing autumn day and the scenery around your Huangfu clan is so beautiful. It's the perfect place to enjoy the scenery." Suddenly, Xiangwu thought of something and tossed another banana to Patriarch Huangfu. This is a specialty of the southern barbarian land. It's very nutritious and suitable for an old man like you, Senior Huangfu. Formless energy flashed in front of Patriarch Huangfu, crushing the banana into pieces. "Marquis, please don't change the topic. Don't be so perfunctory. What is the imperial court's intention today?" Xiangwu's face darkened when he saw Patriarch Huangfu shatter his banana without giving him any face. "I gave you face, but you don't want it. Since you don't want to eat a banana, I'll eat a knife. His Majesty has ordered that from now on, no one from the Huangfu clan is allowed to step out of Yanxi Pingyao. Anyone who dares to do so will be killed." Patriarch Huangfu was so angry that he laughed. "What a joke! Do we need to ask for your permission if we want to leave? What is the imperial court trying to do?" Imprison my Huangfu clan? Jianghu said indifferently, I've already said that this is His Majesty's order. Your Huangfu clan can only abide by it. I won't imprison you for too long. It'll be over soon. Patriarch Huangfu frowned and suddenly thought of something. How long? Jianghu pointed to the east and said, You can leave when the battle at the morgue village is over. Patriarch Huangfu's heart skipped a beat. Something must have happened at the morgue. Frowning at Jianghu, Patriarch Huangfu said in a low voice, What is the imperial court trying to do? They want to protect Chu Xiu, a demon from the Yinma clan. Does His Majesty not know about Chu Xiu's identity and the nature of the Yinma clan? Or are you the one who made the decision on your own? Jianghu chuckled. Senior Huangfu, there are some things that we can still talk about even though you've seen through it. To put it bluntly, the imperial court never cares if you're righteous or evil. They only care if you're obedient or not. So, it's time to test your Huangfu clan. If you're obedient, go back. When the battle is over, I'll leave with my men immediately. A sharp glint flashed across Patriarch Huangfu's eyes. What if I don't listen? Jianghu stood up from the black dragon chariot, the aura around him rising to the extreme, stirring up the winds and clouds. Just based on his aura alone, he could already stand shoulder to shoulder with a martial artist of Chu Wuji's level. He was only a step away from entering the true fire spirit refinement realm. If you don't listen to me, then I won't be polite to you anymore. Give me back my banana. Chapter 646. The Huangfu ancestor was actually someone who could endure patiently. In the pugilistic world, those who reached the third level of spirit condensation were basically big shots who stood at the pinnacle. Those who reached the martial true core realm were known as masters, and they were the experts who had appeared in front of the pugilistic world for the longest time. Those who reached the heaven and earth illumination realm could be counted on one's fingers, and almost all of them were top figures on the sovereign ranking. Most of them didn't often appear in the pugilistic world, so those at the true fire spirit refinement realm could definitely stir up a storm. However, the Huangfu ancestor had clearly reached this realm, and he wasn't at the brink of death from old age. Yet, he still chose to cultivate in seclusion in the Huangfu clan for more than a decade. It wasn't because he was afraid of death, but because he wanted to use the last of his time to escort the Huangfu clan to its final journey. Although the Huangfu clan still had a true fire spirit refinement realm expert like him, the next generation was mediocre, and there weren't many outstanding figures in the younger generation. Therefore, for the sake of the Huangfu clan, he could only choose to stay in the clan and protect it during this period of decline. However, keeping a low profile and enduring patiently didn't mean that the Huangfu ancestor was a weakling. How could a junior like Jianghu act so arrogantly in front of him and even take the initiative to attack him? How could the Huangfu ancestor tolerate that? In that instant, he drew a pitch-black coiling dragon spear from the black dragon carriage and held it in his hand. It was a simple thrust, but it caused the dark clouds in the sky to gather and form a huge cyclone. With a dragon's roar, it came crashing down at the Huangfu ancestor. The eyes of the dragon head on the coiling dragon spear flickered with scarlet killing intent as if it was alive. The coiling dragon spear in Jianghu's hand was also a divine weapon. The Huangfu ancestor raised his head abruptly as divine light gathered in his eyes. Wherever it passed, all the astral energy dissipated, and even the phenomenon formed by Jianghu's spear collapsed. However, Jianghu's spear still bore the powerful force and pierced straight towards Ancestor Huangfu's chest. Wherever it passed, the earth would crack and sonic booms would ring out. It was an extremely ferocious attack. Ancestor Huangfu snorted coldly. He reached out his hand and grabbed Jianghu's spear in the nick of time. Golden stellar energy erupted as his other hand slammed into the spear, sending Jianghu flying. His feet landed on the ground, creating a crater that was several tens of feet wide. Jianghu laughed heartily. Is this the Huangfu clan's secret technique, Spirit Annihilation Eyes? A secret technique that can annihilate all astral energy and origin energy. Interesting, it's much stronger than the Ice Soul Divine Eye of the extreme north's Snowdrift City. Even though Jianghu had already fallen into a disadvantageous position in just a single exchange, one mustn't forget that there was an entire realm of difference between the two of them. The strength that Jianghu had revealed now was sufficiently shocking. Jianghu laughed heartily as he continued to charge forward with his spear in hand. For someone like him who was usually incomparably lazy, this was the only time he could be truly excited. Previously, they thought that Chu Xiu could only choose to defend himself in the Guanzhong torture room. They didn't expect him to be so bold and take the initiative to attack. Previously, they had thought that in such a situation, Chu Xiu could only choose to think of a countermeasure in the Guanzhong disciplinary hall. They had not expected him to be so daring and dare to take the initiative to attack. Therefore, the forces that noticed the commotion were waiting for the result from the morgue. If Chu Xiu won, they would pretend that they knew nothing and ignore the demon-killing alliance. If Chu Xiu won at the morgue village, they would act as if they didn't know anything. They wouldn't have anything to do with the demon-killing alliance. Therefore, everything depended on the result of the battle at the morgue. Of course, it also depended on whether Wei Xia and the others could stop the other forces. But if the morgue won, they could take the opportunity to attack the Guanzhong torture room and gain some fame and benefits. If they couldn't stop them and the others came to help Nianlong, Chu Xiu would be in danger. At this moment in the morgue, after Nianlong learned that the northern drifting snow city and the other forces were stopped by Chu Xiu, he coldly said, "If they don't come, then they won't come. Even without those people, they would at most let some of the Devil Path's remnants escape. But you, Chu Xiu, don't think of leaving the morgue alive. Also, that's all you have. Eastern Qi may be a little slow, but it won't be long before they make their move. The Guanzhong torture room that you've been trying to protect will be destroyed. If you hide underground like a rat, I won't be able to kill you in a short time. But you're unwilling to let go of the Guanzhong torture room and came to me. You're courting death. Chu Xiu, your 7-demon saber can trigger a person's 7 emotions and 6 desires. Have you ever thought that one day, you will die because of your greed? Greed? If people weren't greedy, the world would have been at peace a long time ago. But if you want me to die here, I'm afraid you're thinking too much." The heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand was surging with fiery demonic qi. The demonic qi that the formation emitted was absorbed by the heavenly demon dance and condensed into a demonic shadow that floated behind Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu was not a martial Dao grandmaster yet, his strength was comparable to a martial Dao grandmaster's. At least in terms of the use of strength, most martial Dao grandmasters were no match for Chu Xiu. In fact, Nianlong was right about one thing. Chu Xiu was indeed greedy. This time, if he gave up the Guanzhong torture room and went to some secret places of the Yinma clan to hide for a period of time, it would only be a few years. After all, people in Jianghu were forgetful. After a few years, even if there were still people who wanted to make trouble for him, they would not be able to form an alliance of this scale. But as Nianlong said, Chu Xiu couldn't let go of the Guanzhong torture room. He had spent a lot of effort to get it. If his identity had not been exposed and Divine Lord Luo had not taken action, Chu Xiu was even confident that he could completely take over the Guanzhong torture room as long as he was given more time. The greed in Chu Xiu's heart was indeed strong. To be precise, Chu Xiu was not greedy. He just felt insecure and wanted to continue to climb up. With Chu Xiu's current status and strength, as long as he was willing to leave the Yinma clan, he could live a comfortable life whether he went to the imperial court or the moon-worshipping cult. There was no need for him to live such a dangerous and hard life. Such a choice was not because of how loyal Chu Xiu was to the Yinma clan, nor was it because he was a masochist. It was just that Chu Xiu wanted more things which he could not get by joining the imperial court or the moon-worshipping cult. In fact, many people had this kind of mentality, including those famous martial Dao grandmasters and the Northern Yan emperor like Xianglong. They would more or less have this kind of feeling. Those martial Dao grandmasters were already standing at the top of Jianghu. Their cultivation and strength surpassed 99% of martial artists in Jianghu. Why did they still cultivate in seclusion and pursue greater power? It was because they felt insecure. Although they were strong enough, when they looked up, they could still see the powerhouses at the top. Those who could cultivate to the martial Dao Grandmaster realm were not mediocre. They did not want to be stepped on by others for the rest of their lives while they could only look up. Even the world's #1 heavenly lord of the Mahasvara, Zhong Shenxiu, might be looking up at the realm that Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had reached in the past. Nie Renlong did not understand Chu Xiu's state of mind. He thought that Chu Xiu was very greedy, but in fact, Chu Xiu's greed was more than he imagined. The heavenly demon dance/down, and boundless demonic qi erupted. Wherever this blade passed, endless heaven and earth's essence qi was devoured. Nie Renlong's heaven and earth cloud hands stirred the world, but the power was still devoured by Chu Xiu's blade. This was the power of the greedy blade. He often used the 7 demon blades. In addition to the hatred blade, Chu Xiu even slowly comprehended the true meaning of the greedy blade. The 7 demon blades were essentially the extreme evolution of human emotions. As long as Chu Xiu could completely control these emotions, even if Chu Xiu did not have the 7 demon blades, or even if he did not have a blade, he could still control the power of these emotions. The greedy blade devoured everything, even as if it wanted to devour the heavens and the earth. This greed did not belong to Nie Renlong, but to Chu Xiu. Greed, anger, obsession, hate, love, evil, and desire were the demons of the heart, but they were also the source of power. Nie Renlong roared and tore forward with one hand. The yin and yang of heaven and earth reversed, and 2 completely different forces constantly twisted. One was the purest astral energy in the world, and the other was the evil demonic qi in the surroundings. As the 2 forces intertwined, they enveloped Chu Xiu's blade. As the astral energy exploded, Chu Xiu's figure was blasted backward. Even the greedy blade could not devour this powerful force for a while. However, at this moment, an extremely powerful devouring force came from behind Nie Renlong. A middle-aged martial artist dressed in black stood behind him. From his mouth, a 2-horned evil hungry ghost broke free. It roared and rushed towards Nie Renlong to devour him. Wherever it passed, even the heaven and earth essence energy was devoured. This thing was Chu Xiu's hungry ghost realm incarnation. In fact, Chu Xiu had already placed the hungry ghost realm incarnation here. However, he did not control the human puppet to attack it. After all, the human puppet was just an inanimate object. When it did not move, it would not reveal its aura. Therefore, Nie Renlong had thought that it was just an ordinary demonic martial artist. But when the hungry ghost realm incarnation moved, Nie Renlong finally realized that there was such a great evil hidden here. He was actually so close to it. Nie Renlong no longer cared about attacking Chu Xiu. He stepped forward, and although his steps seemed chaotic, they seemed to form a strange array. At the same time, he formed a seal with both hands, and the yin and yang of heaven and earth reversed. The heaven and earth essence energy within a radius of more than 10 feet seemed to be divided, like a cage, trapping the hungry ghost realm incarnation within. But at this moment, Chu Xiu, who had already escaped, formed a colorless sealing palm seal and slammed it down on Nie Renlong. Sumeru mustard seed, reverse heaven and earth. Chapter 647. Realm and combat power were not absolute. Just like the current Chu Xiu, he no longer put ordinary martial arts Grand Master in his eyes. Even in the face of Nie Renlong, who was on the martial arts ranking list, he dared to take the initiative to counterattack. The hungry ghost Taoist incarnation devoured everything, and Chu Xiu's powerful colorless stop grand handprint fell in front of him. The offensive and defensive momentum had been reversed in an instant. Nie Renlong roared, and powerful gang qi burst out from his body, drawing in the power of heaven and earth. As he waved his hands, yin and yang reversed, and 2 completely different powers converged into a storm that swept out, with a hint of blood in it. The boundless storm swept Nie Renlong into it, and it even devoured the hungry ghost Taoist incarnation. In the end, even Chu Xiu was involved in the storm. He could only resist the power of the storm with the colorless stop grand handprint. Nie Renlong's martial arts inheritance was actually not powerful. His martial arts were very mixed. After reaching the martial arts Grand Master realm, He combined these martial arts with his own martial arts understanding and finally condensed them into this heaven and earth cloud hand. This martial arts technique, or a kind of martial arts, was actually not eye-catching at a low level, but at this time in Nianrenlong's hands, this martial arts technique almost exerted the power of the real pellet state to the extreme, using 1% of strength to stir the heaven and earth. Such borrowing power was considered to be in line with Nianrenlong's own style. In the storm, the hungry ghost Taoist incarnation was constantly devouring the power. It could hold on, but the human puppet couldn't. The human puppet had been refined by Gongshu Yuan using En Lianyan's body. It was unknown whether or not it would have been able to defeat Nianrenlong when it was alive. Now that it was dead, its body would naturally not be able to withstand the impact. This thing was not easy to get. Chu Xiu still wanted to use it a few more times, so he could only let it retreat and withdraw from the storm for the time being. Clenching his hands, the storm burst, and the aura scattered in all directions. Nianrenlong stood in place with a slightly pale face. He couldn't control this level of power for too long. However, just as he was about to check whether Chu Xiu was dead or not, devil qi and Buddhist light burst out from the scattered gang qi at the same time. Chu Xiu's figure was like a demon god as he charged out of the earth qi storm. His hands formed the 9 words formula of fast and slow, and the 9 seals combined into one. With an unparalleled power, he crushed down on Nianrenlong. Chu Xiu wouldn't die so easily if he cultivated the 9 heavens fiend golden body and the great Vajra divine strength at the same time. In terms of defense, he was also stronger than most martial Dao masters. Nianrenlong met the attack with his palms. His left palm was surging with stellar energy, while his right palm was surging with demonic energy. The two powers entangled and intertwined, increasing their power by several times. An explosive sound burst out between Nianrenlong and Chu Xiu. With the two of them as the center, the ground beneath their feet cracked inch by inch, and the cracks spread out for hundreds of feet. Nianrenlong's face was pale, but Chu Xiu's was even paler. His explosive power was indeed amazing. However, he had forcefully resisted Nianrenlong's attack earlier, and now he had to use the colorless stopping palm and 9 seals combined into one, which consumed a lot of energy. Even Chu Xiu was a little overwhelmed. However, no matter how overwhelmed he was, Chu Xiu had to kill Nianrenlong as soon as possible. Otherwise, his raid on the morgue would be meaningless, and he might even put himself in danger. After his attack failed, Chu Xiu immediately pointed out with a finger. Everywhere it passed, everything was destroyed. Heavenly retribution, holy deity slaying finger. The deathly still energy caused Nianrenlong to be extremely shocked. As he defended himself, his figure retreated hastily, but he was still brushed by the finger that was filled with death qi. His arm was instantly dyed pitch black by the death qi, and the deathly still aura was nibbling away at his qi, blood, and meridians. Nianrenlong's face suddenly changed, and he swung his arm. In an instant, a large amount of blood and a black death qi were forced out by him, but his arm was temporarily crippled. At this moment, Chu Xiu used his spirit as a bow, condensed his spiritual power into an arrow, and the soul-extinguishing arrow burst out. No matter how Nianrenlong dodged, the heaven's sun gazing at air skill locked on to his trace. Seeing that there was no way to dodge, Nianrenlong roared, and the power of his qi and blood burst out. He wanted to resist the arrow, but the soul-extinguishing arrow entered his body, and he let out a painful roar. Chu Xiu's figure directly pressed on. Although his face was pale because of the excessive consumption, he still slashed with the sky demon dance in his hand. After a few moves, Nianrenlong was on the verge of death. The battle between Chu Xiu and Nianrenlong would end like this. No one present, even Nianrenlong himself, had expected it. After all, one of them was an expert on the list, and although the other was famous, he was only in the oneness of heaven and man realm. Last time in the northern Yen, Nianrenlong almost killed Chu Xiu after becoming a demon. Although Nianrenlong was in a state of being a demon at that time, Nianrenlong could feel how strong Chu Xiu was at that time. However, when he saw Chu Xiu this time, he was shocked to find that Chu Xiu's strength had more than doubled. This speed was simply shocking. Of course, in reality, Although Chu Xiu had improved, it was not too exaggerated. It was just that Niarenlong had overlooked one thing. Back in the northern Yen, Chu Xiu had appeared as Lin Yi. Therefore, at that time, Chu Xiu had not been able to use all his trump cards. Now that Chu Xiu could finally use all his strength, it was naturally not the same as it was in the past. Seeing that Niarenlong was in danger and almost killed by Chu Xiu with a few slashes, the entire morgue fell into a pessimistic mood. Niarenlong was the initiator and organizer of the alliance. If something happened to him, would there still be a need for the alliance to continue? Su Yan was also extremely anxious. At this time, he wanted to rescue Niarenlong, and he did not want to be entangled with Mei Qinglian anymore. With a furious roar, Su Yan's body shone with golden Buddhist flames, and he punched out with boundless power. This punch forced Mei Qinglian to retreat. However, before he could rescue her, Mei Qinglian made a comeback from behind him. Under the great technique of the Chia girl, demonic aura surged and danced, blocking Su Yan's path. However, before he could completely destroy the demonic aura, an illusion appeared in front of him. He was clearly only a short distance away from rescuing Niarenlong, but no matter how he ran, he could not reach Niarenlong. It was only then that Su Yan realized that he had fallen for Mei Qinglian's great technique of the Chia girl again. By the time Su Yan regained consciousness, a crimson short knife had already appeared in Mei Qinglian's hand, and she was stabbing it at Su Yan's chest. Su Yan put his palms together and spat out a thunderous sound. The Great Light Temple's lion's roar of 9 transformations was unleashed, forcing Mei Qinglian to retreat. However, before he could make a move, Mei Qinglian had actually come again, which made Su Yan go crazy. The great technique of the Chia girl of the Yin Demon Master was magical because it was not a simple mental power illusion. Instead, it could silently invade one's mind. It was just like what had happened just now. It was clearly a head-on clash, yet Su Yan had mysteriously fallen into an illusion. He had almost been ambushed by Mei Qinglian, and he had actually not sensed it at all. This kind of silent illusionary technique was even more frightening. Su Yan was confident that he could rely on his own strength, willpower, and boundless vitality to withstand the great technique of the Chia girl. However, in reality, he had thought too much and had underestimated Mei Qinglian. In this world, one could be a thief for 1,000 days, but there was no such thing as guarding against a thief for 1,000 days. Su Yan had to maintain this tense state of mind at all times to defend against Mei Qinglian's illusion. As such, the more he fought, the more exhausted he became. At that moment, he was not even in the mood to save Niarenlong. Su Yan wanted to save him, but he was stopped by Mei Qinglian. However, someone else had defeated his opponent on the other side. It was not Yan Huainan, who was fighting with Mr. Liu, but Fang Datong of the Giant Spirit Gang. This did not mean that Fang Datong was stronger than Yan Huainan, but rather that his opponent was rather weak. Lu Hongye was one of the weaker ones among the martial arts masters. Coupled with the fact that his legacy was not considered strong, his own power was very limited. Last time, he had been defeated in a few moves when fighting with Chu Xiu. Now, facing Fang Datong, the leader of the Giant Spirit Gang, Lu Hongye was also struggling to hold on. The Giant Spirit Martial Manual of the Giant Spirit Gang was a combination of more than 100 martial arts techniques of the Giant Spirit Gang. Although it was not considered a famous secret manual in the Jianghu, its power was not weak. After dozens of moves, Lu Hongye was already heavily injured by Fang Datong and vomited blood. After dealing with Lu Hongye, Fang Datong instinctively looked at Chu Xiu and Niarenlong. Niarenlong quickly said, "Leader Fang, come and help me." Fang Datong was about to attack, but at that moment, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Leader Fang, we have no enmity between us in the past. I don't mind you joining the demon-slaying alliance today. If you leave now, I'll pretend that nothing has happened. Otherwise, after I leave in defeat today, even if I'm forced to hide in the dark, I'll definitely fight the Giant Spirit Gang to the death. You ruined my future, so I'll kill your entire family. Leader Fang, you must think this through. If you attack today, you better not leave your wife, children, and the trusted subordinates of the Giant Spirit Gang. Otherwise, I'll kill every single one of them I see. Fang Datong's heart suddenly turned cold. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly paused. He believed that with the character and strength that Chu Xiu had displayed, he was capable of doing such a thing. Even he did not have the confidence to defeat Chu Xiu in a head-on battle, not to mention such a terrifying enemy who was shameless enough to hide in the dark, waiting to take a bite out of you at any moment. Sometimes, what was terrifying was not the ferocious tiger baring its fangs and claws in front of you, but the venomous snake hiding in the dark, pouncing on you at any moment. Fang Datong's hesitation instantly put Nianlong in danger. He was almost killed by Chu Xiu's saber. He roared angrily, "Fang Dong, is there something wrong with your brain? From the moment you joined the demon-slaying alliance, there was no turning back. You believe the words of a demonic cultivator? Even if you leave, Chu Xiu will not let you off. Today, let's join forces and kill him here. Who cares about what happens next?" Chapter 648. The giant spirit gang had been lukewarm until now. Although it had not declined, it had not developed much either. This had a lot to do with Fang Datong's character. This person was indeed not decisive enough, and was somewhat indecisive. At this time, he had already joined the demon-slaying alliance. However, at such a critical moment, he actually hesitated after being threatened by Chu Xiu. Anyone in his place would be gnashing their teeth in hatred. The sky demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand brought with it an overwhelming demonic energy as it slashed down. At the same time, he unleashed the great cycle of mental demons, which transformed into a soul-subduing Hades song, which kept assailing Nianlong, gradually weakening his power. Chu Xiu's ability to kill a martial Dao master like Nianlong, who had been famous for a long time, with heaven and human unity, was already the limit of what Chu Xiu could do. If Fang Datong had intervened just now, the outcome of the battle might not have been certain. However, in the short moment when Fang Datong hesitated, Nianlong's body had already suffered a few more wounds. Seeing this, Fang Datong gritted his teeth and threw a punch at Chu Xiu. Just as Nianlong said, he had no way out. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu was telling the truth or not, he could only bet on Nianlong winning and Chu Xiu dying. Kill him. Nianlong advanced instead of retreating with his heavily injured body. He performed the heaven and earth cloud-reaching hand to the extreme. Yin and Yang Qi gathered in his palm and directly entangled the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand. He could not even get away. Seeing that Fang Datong's punch was about to land, a black figure suddenly appeared behind Chu Xiu. It opened its mouth and roared like a ferocious, hungry ghost. The evil power devoured everything and directly swallowed Fang Dong. Fang Datong was fighting fiercely with Lu Hongya. Although he was stronger than Lu Hongya, he did not dare to divert his attention to other battles while fighting a martial Dao grandmaster. Therefore, he did not see the entire battle between Nianlong and Chu Xiu. At this moment, seeing this evil thing appearing in front of him that could devour any power and even wanted to devour his body, Fang Datong subconsciously prepared to retreat and then find a way to repel it. However, Fang Datong's retreat caused Nianlong to spit out a mouthful of blood. 70% was because he had overused his power, which affected his internal injuries, and 30% was because he was angered by Fang Datong. At this moment, Nianlong finally understood something. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. The so-called alliance seemed strong, but it was just a bunch of idiots dragging them down. The ones who died were always their own people. At this critical moment of life and death, Fang Datong actually chose to retreat cautiously. He was simply a coward. It did not matter if he left, but he had caused Nianlong to be trapped here. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Of course, Fang Datong's action was not actually to deliberately trap Nianlong. It was just his nature, and it was a completely subconscious reaction. Fang Datong might look tall and mighty, and his nickname was the Ferocious Mighty General. However, under his ferocious appearance, there was an extremely sensitive and cautious heart. Once there was any movement, he would choose the safest method and be extremely cautious. Unfortunately, his cautiousness this time caused Nianlong to die. In that instant, Chu Xiu gathered the last bit of power of his essence soul, turning it into a soul-destroying arrow and shooting it out. At such a close distance, even if Chu Xiu did not use Heaven's Sun gazing at air to lock onto Niarenlong would not be able to escape. With his primordial spirit heavily injured, Niarenlong let out a muffled groan. However, he actually managed to hold on and did not lose his consciousness. Instead, all the blood and qi in his body condensed into his crippled arm. He chopped down vertically with his palm, and the exploding blood and qi were like a giant blade that slashed towards Chu Xiu. His essence soul was heavily injured, but Niarenlong could still rely on his own willpower to maintain his consciousness. He could even use his own strength to control the power of blood and qi. This kind of tenacious state of mind was indeed incomparably shocking. Moreover, Niarenlong had specially studied all kinds of detailed information about this great enemy of his, Chu Xiu. He knew that Chu Xiu had the great devil blood technique. Under the premise that he did not have enough power to suppress the boiling of blood and qi, burning his essence blood was equivalent to suicide. Therefore, he actually came up with this method to fight with Chu Xiu for the last time, and it could be considered as using all his strength. If he burned his essence blood, Niarenlong could still recover if he did not die this time. However, if he gathered all the blood and qi in his body in one arm and then directly burst out at the end, it was simply equivalent to crippling his own arm. Even if he won this battle, he could only be a useless person in the future. In the face of Niarenlong's attack, Chu Xiu's figure hurriedly retreated, but Niarenlong's right hand suddenly grabbed, and the space around Chu Xiu's body seemed to be locked, and the qi of heaven and earth condensed behind Chu Xiu, blocking and delaying his movements. How strong would an extraordinary martial Dao master be when he burst out all the power of blood and qi? This was something that Chu Xiu did not know, and probably not many people in Jianghu knew. After all, there were not many people who could make a martial Dao master of Niarenlong's level fight to this extent. At this moment, a lot of things popped up in Chu Xiu's mind. In fact, he still had a lot of trump cards, but even Chu Xiu himself was not sure how strong these trump cards could be. However, in the current situation, Chu Xiu was not 100% sure that he could survive Niarenlong's desperate attack, so Chu Xiu did not have much time to think. He gently raised the demon dance in his hand, but it seemed like he was holding a mountain. Chu Xiu's entire person was immersed in a strange state. This was a martial art that he was unable to grasp. In the past, he had only glanced at it once, but he had been stimulated to the point of vomiting blood. Even now, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could completely master it, but he just needed to borrow a trace of this martial art, just a trace. As the saber slashed down, the saber intent was surging, the saber momentum was turbulent, and the saber energy was vast and surging, like a tsunami tearing the sky and the earth, drowning and devouring everything. Devouring the heavens and destroying the earth's 7 limits, sea breaking. Everything in front of Chu Xiu seemed to be divided into 2 halves in front of him. The heaven and earth yuan qi was torn by the saber qi, and it did not heal for a long time. Niarenlong's body was also torn by this saber. Almost in an instant, Niarenlong was no longer alive, his body was neatly cut in half. Until his body fell to the ground, a large amount of blood flowed out. He did not even have the chance to use this last desperate attack, and he was killed by Chu Xiu. Niarenlong did not die in peace. The power of this saber was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's imagination, and similarly, the power was also beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. This was not a power that a human could control, but the power of heaven and earth. No wonder it was said that almost all those who had obtained this martial art did not have a good ending. Using the body of a human to control this saber technique that contained the power of heaven and earth was itself the power of stealing heaven and earth, and it was bound to incur the jealousy of the heavens, so dying a horrible death was considered normal. At this moment, although Chu Xiu had not reached the point of dying a horrible death, after this saber slash, faint cracks appeared all over Chu Xiu's body, like a porcelain doll that had been smashed. Even though Chu Xiu cultivated the 9 heavens demonic golden body and the great King Kong divine strength, he could not withstand this powerful force. Blood seeped out from those cracks, making Chu Xiu look as if he had been fished out of a vat of blood. It was very frightening. Turning to look at Fang Dadong, Chu Xiu suddenly revealed a trace of a smile on his face. His whole body was blood red, except for his snow-white teeth, but it gave off an extremely awe-inspiring feeling. Leader Fang, you made the wrong choice. There are many choices in this life, but some of them are related to one's life. Unfortunately, you made the wrong choice. Seeing this scene, Fang Dadong did not say anything and directly turned to flee. It was not that he was timid, but he knew the gap between him and Nie Renlong. Now that even Nie Renlong was dead, the alliance must have been disbanded. Instead of going back to think of a way to deal with Chu Xiu's revenge, would he still stay here to seek death? However, at this moment, Fang Dadong did not know that Chu Xiu could not even move a step. He had only forcefully put on a show, but he did not expect Fang Dadong to be so easily scared away. Chu Xiu still had dozens of preparation methods to show off. Of course, this could not be blamed on Fang Dadong's cowardice. He was incomparably cautious. Even if Chu Xiu were to sing an empty fort strategy in front of him, Fang Dadong probably would not dare to test him. At this moment, in the battlefield, Nie Renlong's death and Fang Dadong's escape were a devastating blow to the demon-slaying alliance, especially those small forces who were not strong enough. They did not have the mood to fight anymore and all fled. When Yan Huainan, who was fighting with Mr. Liu, saw this scene, he sighed helplessly, turned around, and fled. Yan Huainan felt a little emotional about Nie Renlong's death. The northern Yan land was not as big as the eastern Qi land, so the outstanding figures of the northern Yan martial arts world had some interaction. Although Yan Huainan and Nie Renlong were not friends, they were not enemies either. They knew each other very well. Nie Renlong was a man of ability, strength, and ambition. Unfortunately, his luck was not on his side, and he died here. The alliance was initiated by Nie Renlong. Now that he was dead, even if the people of the Great Light Temple were still here, they would not be able to defeat Chu Xiu and the others. It was worth it for him to temporarily retreat. However, Mr. Liu was not satisfied with the fight after Yan Huainan fled. Seeing that everyone in the morgue had retreated in defeat, Su Yan had no choice but to grit his teeth and say, "Warriors of the Great Light Temple, retreat immediately." Su Yan's actions were not empty words. Although he was unwilling, he still had some rationality left. If he continued fighting, he would not be slaying the demon-slaying alliance. He would be courting death. The people of the morgue were completely defeated. When the people of the righteous sects had all fled, even the people on Chu Xiu's side could not believe that they had actually won. Mei Qinglian walked over slowly. She looked a little surprised and said, "I guessed wrong. You were not gambling. You were really confident." Chu Xiu sighed and turned his face to Mei Qinglian expressionlessly. "Help me up." Chapter 649. Chu Xiu could be proud of himself for being able to kill a martial Dao master like Nie Renlong. However, Chu Xiu's physical strength had reached its limit after the kill. If not for Mei Qinglian's support, he would have collapsed to the ground. Leaning on Mei Qinglian, Chu Xiu forced himself to stay awake and said, "There's no need to chase after them. Give everyone an hour to clean up the battlefield. After that, leave northern Yan as quickly as possible." With Nie Renlong's death, the morgue was destroyed as well. The items in the morgue naturally belonged to Chu Xiu and the others. A force like the morgue, which did not have the time to build up its foundation, would not have many good items. At the very least, Chu Xiu did not think much of it. However, his subordinates and the people from the Inmo clan were very interested in these things, so let them plunder them. If a person in power was stingy to the extreme, then he could not expect others to risk their lives for him. At that moment, Lu Hongye walked up with a hand on his chest, looking slightly ashamed. "Sir, please forgive me. I'm useless." To be honest, Lu Hongye had not deliberately gone easy on Chu Xiu to kill him. It was because he was truly no match for Fang Dadong. He was now in the same boat as Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu died, he would not have a good ending either. Chu Xiu did not care about Lu Hongye's matter. When he was fighting Nie Renlong earlier, He had been paying attention to the movements around him. He also knew that Lu Hongye did not do it on purpose. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "There's no need to apologize to me. You are weak. If you are killed in the future, you should apologize to yourself." After this, there are many secret cultivation techniques in the Guanzhong torture room. You can take them for reference. There were actually many cultivation techniques in the Guanzhong torture room. In the past, when Guan Xiu was around, they were basically used as rewards for outstanding martial artists. However, now that the Guanzhong torture room was under his control, Chu Xiu could naturally give them to whoever he wanted. After completely plundering the morgue, Chu Xiu immediately left Northern Yen with his men. Of course, to be precise, it was Chu Xiu who was carried out of Northern Yen. After all, he did not even have the strength to walk. Meanwhile, in the Northern Yen, Su Yun and Wei Shiya's battle had ended. With the two of them as the epicenter, the area within a radius of several hundred zhang had been completely destroyed. It was simply impossible to see what it looked like before. One could imagine how powerful the battle between the two of them was. Su Yun stood there without moving. His expression was still calm as he said, "Old Wei, are you going to continue fighting? I dare to fight to the death, but you don't." Although Wei Shiya was also standing there, compared to Su Yun, he revealed a trace of exhaustion on his face. His complexion was even sickly pale, but there was no need for him to make another move. Wei Shiya shook his head and said, "You're wrong. It's just fighting to the death. I have never been afraid. If I were afraid, I would have been afraid back in Nine Heaven Mountain. However, you are right. There is no need to continue fighting. Let's go." With a wave of his hand, Wei Shiya called Chu Wuji, who was fighting with Su Du. The two of them left immediately. Su Du did not stop them. He just stood beside Su Yun and asked, "Senior brother, who is stronger, you or Wei Shiya?" Su Yun did not answer Su Du directly. He only said, "Unfortunately, Wei Shiya is already old. Time makes the hero. His era is over. When he broke through to the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was already too old." Su Du nodded in understanding. He understood what Su Yun meant. In the battle just now, Su Yun was stronger. If Wei Shiya could enter the true fire spirit refinement realm when he was young, he could still fight with Su Yun. However, he had passed the peak now. Of course, there was nothing for Su Yun to be proud of. There was indeed nothing to be proud of when he fought with an old man who was about to enter the declining phase of qi and blood. "By the way, senior brother, are we still going to the memorial hall?" Su Yun shook his head and said, "There is no need to go." Su Du was surprised and asked, "Why? After defeating Wei Shiya and the others, we don't have to go?" Su Yun said indifferently, "We have been delayed for so long. If Chu Xiu wins, we can only collect his corpse. On the other hand, if Chu Xiu loses, there is no point for us to go. If there are no accidents, Su Yen will bring his people back, no matter if he wins or loses." Su Du laughed and said, "Senior brother, do you really trust Su Yen that much? No matter if he wins or loses, he can bring his people back?" Among the heads of the 6 martial courtyards, I am most optimistic about Su Yen. He is also the most promising martial artist in the temple to enter the true fire spirit refinement realm in the future. The wrath of the Vajra was ignited by the fire of the heart. Although the power of the Vajrayard's cultivation method was great, it was easier to violate the precepts of anger. But you can see the result. Su Yen successfully suppressed his anger and restrained his anger. He is so calm that he doesn't look like a martial artist from the Vajra courtyard. On the contrary, Su Xing of the Dharma court can't suppress his anger. If he continues like this, he will die in his anger sooner or later. Su Du touched his bald head and said with a smile, "Shouldn't I be the most promising martial artist in the temple to enter the true fire spirit refinement realm? Senior brother, you are looking down on me." Su Yun glanced at him and said, "You don't count. If you are willing to break through the true fire spirit refinement realm in a normal way, do you still need to waste your time in the real pellet state? I'm afraid you can reach this realm long ago." Su Du laughed twice and didn't say anything. At this time, in the extreme north of the fluttering snow city, Pang Hu was covered in blood. Although Bai Hantian opposite was much better, his own consumption was also very huge. Pang Hu's strength was not weak, but he was just a bandit after all. He didn't have the deep foundation of Bai Hantian, the lord of the extreme north of the fluttering snow city. In a real fight he was still at a disadvantage. Bai Hantian looked at Pang Hu and frowned. "Are you still not going to step aside?" Pang Hu let out a sigh of relief and waved his hand. "Retreat." Pang Hu had already done his best to resist for Chu Xiu for such a long time. If he continued to fight, he would really bury the entire Qilian village here. Seeing Pang Hu retreat, Bai Hantian wasn't very happy. Seriously injuring Pang Hu had consumed a lot of his own energy, and he needed to recover. The most important thing was that he was already late for so long. What was going on at the memorial hall? Bai Hantian didn't dare to delay, and he didn't care about recovering his strength. He immediately sent people to the memorial hall. As for the Huangfu clan, Jianghu was still in a heated battle with ancestor Huangfu. Jianghu's own strength was indeed quite shocking. Even when fighting with ancestor Huangfu, an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was only at a slight disadvantage. Of course, this was also because ancestor Huangfu didn't want to kill him. After all, Jianghu was only besieging the Huangfu clan, not annihilating them. Moreover, ancestor Huangfu was also aware of Jianghu's position in the northern Yan royal family. If he dared to kill Jianghu, he would have shed all pretense of cordiality with the entire northern Yan imperial court. Therefore, at this point in time, ancestor Huangfu simply stopped. He snorted coldly and ordered everyone from the Huangfu clan to return. The Huangfu clan would not be involved in this matter anymore. At this point, Jianghu seemed to have not had enough. He shouted at ancestor Huangfu, "Hey, you're not fighting anymore? You're leaving just like that? Why don't you fight a little longer?" Being able to fight with an expert like ancestor Huangfu who had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm was very beneficial to Jianghu. He still hadn't had enough yet. However, ancestor Huangfu ignored him and directly brought his men back to the Huangfu clan and closed the gates. Jianghu shrugged helplessly. He had already gone too far by besieging the Huangfu clan. If he attacked the Huangfu clan as well, it would be equivalent to shedding all pretense of cordiality. Even if His Majesty allowed him to do as he pleased, he would not tolerate such a thing. The forces that came to support the morgue were all stopped halfway. Only the drifting snow city of the far north still insisted on coming. But before the people from the drift snow city of the extreme north arrived at the morgue, they met with the disciples who had escaped from the morgue after the collapse. When Bai Hantian heard the news, his face was filled with disbelief. Chu Xiu actually killed Nianrenlong and destroyed the morgue. Their so-called demon-slaying alliance was completely annihilated before they could even succeed. Nianrenlong's death was even more unacceptable to Bai Hantian. In the past, when they were young, Bai Hantian had already competed with Nianrenlong. The two of them had secretly fought many times, especially the last time. Nianrenlong's son had died, and he himself had turned into a demon. Under those circumstances, Nianrenlong had not died. Now, he clearly had the upper hand, but he had died just like that? But when Bai Hantian arrived at the morgue and saw the corpses on the ground, especially Nianrenlong's corpse, he had to accept the reality even if he didn't want to believe it. Sighing, Bai Hantian said in a low voice, "Men, stitch up Nianrenlong's corpse and clean up this place. Bury Nianrenlong in the morgue. Dig up the mausoleum and give him a grand burial." Bai Hantian and Nianrenlong were definitely not good friends. But seeing the person who had competed with him in the past end up like this, Bai Hantian felt a little conflicted. The death of a person was like an extinguished lamp. There was no need to bring up the past grudges again. He would collect Nianrenlong's corpse and put an end to it. The Northern Yan incident was so big that all parties were paying attention to it at all times. So in less than a day, the news had spread throughout the Northern Yan martial arts world. Chu Xiu had raided the morgue and killed Nianrenlong. Experts from all sides had intercepted the reinforcements. Even the Northern Yan imperial court had intervened. The entire Northern Yan martial arts world was in a mess. It was hard for people to see what was going on and to see what was going on. But the only thing that everyone could be sure of was that Chu Xiu was not easy to kill. Don't be fooled by the fact that he seemed to be in a precarious situation now. He could be completely destroyed the next day and become a symbol of the righteous martial arts world, just like the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Heaven Mountain. But to get rid of Chu Xiu, how much would it cost? This was something that needed to be weighed carefully. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.